in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you. In the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the community team for the Elite FPL podcast. Hello, everyone in chat that's been waiting here for so long now. I know that we had a little bit of a scare at 6 o'clock. I accidentally pressed the stream now button. I've got a new camera, so I was going to show you guys the camera quality. Let me know what you think of the camera. Literally been playing around with this camera for like the last 3 hours. Drove 100 miles round trip to get a lead to try and get it working for this evening. For those of you who don't know, we've done some polls in Discord, and we've received some great feedback. We've had over 170 responses across the board for player picks, player selections. Crystal clear, good quality. Thank you. We're going to try and upgrade Steve-O. I've got a camera going to Steve-O because at the moment he's using his integrated camera on his laptop. So we're going to send him my old camera, so he's going to get an upgrade as well. So we've told you guys that we're basing our community team on the following players, which are, if I just get them up now, we've got Button as a sub goalie. That's probably not going to ever feature. We've got Kelly, Alexander-Arnold, Salah, Sterling, Dendonka, Greenwood. Now the missing slots we asked you guys to fill. These players were taken from Rate My Teams that you guys basically subjected us to in the Discord RMT channel, tagging the Elite FPL community team. Now, the outstanding picks have been voted on, and at the moment, I'm going to fill the team in. Steve-O, thank you ever so much for all that work in setting all that up. I'm just going to just bring up this now, and we'll start putting in with the goalkeeper. So in goal, we are going to have Pope. Nick Pope in goal to partner Button for game week 1. And in defence, you guys voted on him. Lucas Digne. Obviously, you guys aren't put off with the weakened or slightly weakened Everton defence, and you've gone with that attacking threat in Digne, and I can't blame you whatsoever. The next one up is Zinchenko. We saw him again start today. Over at Angelino, he's going to be, I think he's nailed number 1 spot. I think a lot of people do as well. He's in my team. And then the third spot will be Aaron Wan-Bissaka. That will make the back 4 of Digne, Alexander-Arnold, Zinchenko, and Wan-Bissaka. Then we have, in midfield, we have got Ryan Fraser. And you guys have also voted on Perez. Jose Perez instead of Tielemans. Perez just about nipped him to the point, so therefore, yeah, Jose Perez is partnering Fraser with the Salah Sterling combination in midfield. It's going to be a 4-4-2, as Steve-O said. Now, this is the sticky bit. Now, we've got an issue. You guys voted for Kane and Wilson up front, but money is not going to allow that. We're -3, so we're going to now ask you in Discord right now to vote on the remaining basically the striker slot that Kane's going to have to be downgraded. Who's going to partner Wilson out of Wesley, Jota and King? The question is now in Discord. Please use Discord to vote for your answer, and we'll come back to that shortly. Steve-O, did you watch the Community Shield game?
Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody, and yes, I did not watch the Community Shield, but I did the usual when it comes to football. I just listen about it and see what the experts tell us about the game, and the basic understanding is simply this. Liverpool apparently looked a bit tired, mentally drained, not really up for it. City looked apparently like they took the eye off the ball in the second half, kind of calmed down a bit, and I mean, it ended 1-1. Setting aside penalties and everything, you just think, well, it's two heavyweights going at it, and it ended 1-1. I think for me, I'm not going to lie, I put out a poll on Twitter, and it was, I mean, it's a bit of a simple question, really. Does this Community Shield alter your opinion on your choice of selection? And the simple answer was an outright yes. For me, I think you'd be mad not to go without Salah. We all know that Salah doesn't perform as I always do versus the big teams. It's always the rubbish teams. Let's be brutally honest here. I've said it a million times and I'll say it again. I actually think game week 1, all the big hitting players, i.e. Salah, Kane, Sterling, who have all got 3 excellent fixtures to captain against. I personally believe that they're all going to cancel each other out within like a couple of points here or there. I really do think they're all going to equally score. You look at the Community Shield today and you think, oh, penalty taker in the in the shootout, Zinchenko. Good. I want to see that. You know, the fact that Sterling my understanding was up front on his own to start with. Now, I'm obviously aware that he's been playing pre-season virtually up front. And to be honest with you, I'm probably going to be captaining versus West Ham. But then, of course, it's that whole psychology thing. Oh, wait a minute. He's playing Saturday morning at 12:30. I don't like that. But then again, I haven't got any captain's choices in the Sunday kickoff when it's Chelsea versus Man U, or even I think Arsenal are playing on Sunday as well, aren't they? Jason versus Newcastle. I think that's the case. Yeah. So it's a case of, do I captain someone on a Friday evening game where the majority of people are going to be going with, or do I go with Saturday morning or early afternoon with Sterling? And to be honest with you, I think based on pre-season and some of the talk that we've had through the Discord group regarding Salah, I think I'm going to go with Sterling, mate.
Really?
I think I'm going to go. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I mean, I said to you guys, I've got Kane in my team, and he's got the armband on, and the rate that we seem to be getting subscribers, there could be a realistic chance that I will have the armband come game week 1 on Kane, and I'm actually feeling a little bit more relieved at that prospect now, due to the fact that Salah just doesn't seem to be finding his finishing boots. Let me just read through some of the comments at the moment in chat. You guys have been chatting away for quite some time. Yassine Clushin in chat. Good evening, guys. Good evening, Yassine. How you doing? VAR's in chat. Carl Kirsten too. I have 25 players nailed in my team. So, feel the pain, Carl. Squally D. Hello to you. Resi Desi 11 in chat. Here we go. Keboy's in chat. We've got Simon Andreasen, Alex Summerson, FPL Booner's here as well. Dereco. Don't forget, guys, there's a poll going on in the poll vote here channel in Discord. Please vote on that poll at the moment. Jota's in the lead by 1 place.
I've just voted Jason.
There you go.
I've just voted, and I went with Wesley because of his fixtures after Tottenham.
We've got FPL Pitch in chat. We've got Goblin 140, Tristan Mitchell, Pizza. I like pizza. I wanted pizza this evening actually, but I don't think I'm going to get it. Nuno Santo. We've got Ramsey Sinclair, One Life Soccer TV, Shane Johns. Welcome to the stream. We had a subscriber as well. I want to say thank you for that subscribe. But yeah, we're going to just scroll this down. FPL Penguins there, Nick 2, Shane McCarthy. God, there's a lot of you. John Fox, Emilian's in chat. FPL Rubber Duckies here, Daniel Jarman. Wow, there's just loads. It's great to see. Block FPL's in chat. Hello, Block. How you doing? Joel Street, Chaban's here. Wow, I think it's going to be a busy evening. So if I missed your name out, I do apologise. I just can't keep going on. So the community team, like I said, it's been shaping up for some time now. We're kind of almost there at selecting the final 11. It looks to be that Jota at the moment is going to be taking Kane's place at that striker role, partnering Wilson in the 4-4-2, and that'll be set for game week 1. Yeah.
I want to make this clear to everybody in chat. The reason why we're getting rid of Kane is because we don't want to make this as convoluted and as complicated as possible. We could simply ask you guys live right now, do you want to downgrade one of the midfielders, one of the defenders to try and accommodate Kane? But it's just going to become a total mess. And that's why me and Jason decided, let's just calm down. Jason was the main one, really. Let's just calm down. Let's make it as easy as possible. We just thought, because actually, to be fair, I could have been really, what's the word I'm looking for? Uptight and just gone, do you know what, guys? The team that you've selected with the majority of votes that have come in with your community teams that you thought was ideal, the partnership up front was actually Wesley and Wilson. So actually, the majority, I could have just said, you know what, Jason, the team is based on those 2 strikers as well. But I thought, no, let's just make it a bit different. But it looks like it could be Jota now.
Could be Jota, absolutely. And for those who don't know, this team's going to be entered into a podcast league with other podcasters in, and so you guys are going to be representing the Elite FPL. What were you going to ask me, Steve-O?
The same. Well, what are your thoughts on this team, really?
Yeah, it's a good team. I mean, it's pretty safe. It's a safe team. It's got some safe options in there. There's no massive risks. I like it. I do like it. I like the Pope goalie selection. I possibly would have gone Heaton over Pope. But I mean, this is just. I mean, it's not going to be a great deal of difference in it. Digne is someone that could do well. Obviously, Everton's fixtures really do turn out really well for the beginning of the season. And I mean, let's just bring him up now. It's got Crystal Palace away, Watford at home. Look at all these greens. We've all been looking over Everton's fixtures, and I know Idrissa Gueye's gone now, but Moise Kean. We need to talk about. We'll get to Moise Kean later on, but I mean, Lucas Digne firing those set pieces, and getting crosses into the box. Does Moise Kean now coming to Everton increase Digne's appeal? Yes or no? Answer in chat, guys. But I just want to cover a few things. And I've become like Steve-O. I've got a bit of a notebook going on here at the moment. Don't know if you guys... Is it going to focus on... New camera. Is it going to focus? There we go. So we're talking about the Community Shield, and I didn't get to watch it because I was driving, believe it or not. I had it on Radio 5 Live in the car, and it did feel like Liverpool were just not really firing on all cylinders, and Man City kind of taking the better of the chances. I did see a quick highlight though, of Salah headering the ball over Raul Bravo and it being cleared off the line by Walker. That was pretty insane. But I just want to talk about Moise Kean and where you guys moving away from the Community Shield, Moise Kean for Everton signing, and what sort of price point do you expect him to be at?
I personally would like to see him coming at about 6.5. I believe Calvert-Lewin's 6. I think 6.5 would be about right. He's 19. He's come from Juventus. I mean, that means absolutely nothing. I've looked at his stats, his real stats, in the sense of what he did for Juventus, and I was shocked when I found out who this guy was and what he did for Juventus. 11 goals, 9. Sorry, what was it? 6 goals in Serie A or something like that in a very short amount of time. Now, I think for me it's a wait and see for him, based on what Stein and what was his name? Dino. I apologise. It was something like Dino something. And they were talking about, so Stefan Maxwell saying 6 goals in 13 appearances, which is very, very good. But, Stein and Dino were talking about this Kean, and they said that he's absolutely fantastic. The question is, though, he's a kid coming all the way from Italy to go to Everton. He's going to be you would think he's going to be the main man. Is he that? I always look at players like this and think, are they really that class of player where they really are above their station when it comes to, say, a team they're already playing for? Well, let's be brutally honest here. Juventus are a huge club. He seems to have done very, very well for them. So maybe this could be that kind of like step down, if you know what I mean, where he can kind of prove the kind of player that he really is. Now, that could go one of two ways. That could either be a complete fail because he's just a 19-year-old kid and he's got all the pressure in the world at whatever amount of money that they're paying for him. I think it's 27 or 37 million for him. Or he could just completely dominate. We don't know, but I think he's certainly a wait and see. I mean, everybody in chat's basically saying 7 million. 7 million away we go.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's around about the 7 million mark. Maybe 6.5, 7 million. But we've just had someone screaming in chat. Arioki, Jason, John-Philippe Gbamin is the Everton signing that you should be talking about. Obviously, they've signed the defensive midfielder from the Ivory Coast national player. He's 23 years old. It could be a really important signing for Everton. What's your thoughts on him, Steve-O?
Who's that, sorry?
Jean-Philippe Gbamin, a CDM.
For who?
For Everton. He's gone to Everton.
Well, I thought that they signed some bloke from Mons and Boas Rice, one of our regular.
Yeah, Mains.
Is that the guy? Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Right, yeah. Well, based on, I can only comment on what Boas Reese, whatever, commented on, and he said that he was the best defensive midfielder in the Bundesliga last year. A bit like Idrissa Gray. I was listening to a podcast this morning about Idrissa Gay before he came to Everton and what he did for Aston Villa, and basically it sounds the same as what Everton have got from this particular player here. So again, I've got no actual direct opinion on him, but what I will say is that if he can replicate anything that Gay did, then maybe the Everton defence does come back into our thinking again. But am I right in thinking that who's their centre back's going to be? Michael Keane and who? I mean, I don't have a clue. It's Holgate or something, I believe. At the end of the day, I just think that it's down to Coleman and Digne, like you said, they've got a sea of green. I'm personally not going with an Everton defender myself. A notorious nerd saying Mina, but he's not allowed to play. He's been suspended because of the fact that he participated in an advertising betting company abroad. So he's apparently suspended or something. Please correct me if I'm wrong in chat, but I'm kind of holding off from Everton, but ironically they just seem to can't score. Yeah, in pre-season they've been defending really, really well. What do you take from that? I don't know. So will my thoughts change by the end of what do you call it?
By the end of the it's game week 0. I'm calling this game week 0.
Yeah. No, it won't. I'm pretty happy with my team, to be honest with you.
Cal H in chat is saying, Elite FPL, do you think Keane will start his first game against Palace?
No. It'll be Calvert-Lewin, like he's just mentioned there. I think Silva will play virtually the same team that finished game week 38, basically, with the odd exception due to injury.
Okay. Okay, Calvert-Lewin, yeah, it's all good. Moving on from Moise Keane and Everton, we'll talk about Gomez, obviously starting today in that Liverpool team. Do you think that Gomez is going to be the permanent partner of Van Dijk in Liverpool centre-back?
Well, my basic understanding is that the simple answer is yes. I think that it looks like, and thanks to our good friend Davey FPL, he thinks that Gomez is the main man as well. So I think that yes, it looks like based on this game alone that Gomez will be that number one. But would people really downgrade Trent Alexander-Arnold or Robertson or even Van Dijk down to Gomez? I doubt it, because they're going to be worried about rotation. Yeah, ironically, wasn't it Trent Alexander-Arnold that was taken off today? Maybe people in chat can tell us why he was taken off. But that's a bit concerning, because like I said, Davey FPL, he is the one that's been saying of all the defenders in that team, Trent is the most likely to be rotated.
He's not a great defender, and that's the problem. And once he's being exposed, he just doesn't learn from his mistakes. He gets so far forward, and I wouldn't say he doesn't track back. He just doesn't position himself always in the best places. And I think Klopp kind of gets to the point where he has no choice but to kind of take him off. But I just want to say that we've got a news flash. Wesley's actually overtaken Jota in the poll.
Oh wow!
In the Discord, we're gonna run that poll up until the end of the stream, guys. In Discord, there's been a few people, over 30 of you have voted. I'm sure a few more can vote before the end of the stream. We can get a definitive answer on who will partner Wilson up front for our community team. Okay, moving away. Obviously, Sterling had a decent game again today. KDB showed glimpses of his amazing self, but it was a bit rusty in one or two passes that he tried slotting through. But that's, it's understandable this stage of the season. The one talking point which I noticed as well is Sane going off injured in the first 15 minutes, was seen limping off the field. That's one to watch, because I know a lot of people were I may be considering Sane as a cheaper option into that Man City midfield. Personally, I wasn't, but I know other people were. But that would be interesting to see where we are with Sane, and whether that will change anyone's teams drastically over the next few days.
I mean, the tourist nerd is putting up the angry faces in chat, but do you think that? I mean, I was reading today that it looks like it could be the fact that he is going to be going to Bayern Munich, and maybe he's having a bit of a fake injury to say, do you know what, I can't be bothered to play anymore. I want to get going to Bayern Munich, because at the end of the day, it's got to be done by what, Thursday or Friday?
I don't think any footballer is. I don't want to play anymore for my. I don't know. I think that. I don't know. I would hate to think that's the case. I think it's more to do, probably to do with like just precautionary, because if there is any transfer potential, they don't want to risk anything.
Clement Roux coming straight in there with Sane doesn't want to play for City. Really not interested, and was just faking an injury. I mean, obviously he's just suggesting there, but I really do think that. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute he was like faking injury. It's just a classic thing of like Clement Roux said. I agree. I just think, you know what, Bayern Munich have come in for me. You know what, Pep, just let me go. You weren't there to play at the end of last season. So,
can I just ask a question to you in chat as well? And I know we're not here to talk about my team, but in the event of a comment that was just put in chat, TAA worries me. I can downgrade to VVD and save 0.5. Here's a question for you. Would you, and this is for you, Boona, as well. I know how much you have your Tottenham tinted glasses on. If I was to downgrade Trent Alexander-Arnold in my team to Van Dijk, I could then use that 0.5 to upgrade Walker-Peters to Digne. Would you, chat, what did you think? What would you think of going Walker-Peters to Digne and then Trent to Van Dijk? I just want to see what your opinions are on that as we progress forward. We will be taking a few call-ins this evening just to talk about the events of today and obviously any team selection changes. But Steve, would you have any basic first opinions of me swapping out Walker-Peters for Digne?
Well, quickly before I answer that, FPL Mechanic has corrected me and said that anybody that's exiting the Premier League, they've got till the 31st of August. So I've been corrected there. So obviously it's the transfer window shuts on a Thursday or Friday for the Premier League. But I mean, based on the comments coming through here, everybody's just screaming basically, yeah, do it. Would I do it? I mean, you're upgrading Kyle Walker-Peters, a player which I think is somebody that you're going to be having to deal with in future for a transfer,
yeah,
possibly due to rotation, because he's not first choice basically.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a fair shout. I mean, I've already addressed that. I've always addressed that Walker-Peters is obviously a fire that's waiting to be put out in my team, and I think logic would dictate that I should probably try to start the season with as few risks as possible, especially when I've got Ceballos in my team anyway, who we have literally no idea how he's going to perform come game week 1. Cool.
Yeah, I think based on everything you just said, I think it's a very good move. I'm still willing to stick with Trent Alexander-Arnold. I just think that the attacking threat he has is frightening. But my basic understanding is, aren't they going to Istanbul to play in this Super Cup on Wednesday, or I think it's Wednesday, the following week, if you know what I mean. So they're playing Friday night, Wednesday, and then back in on, I'm assuming,
I'll just double
Sunday.
Check the fixtures. I'm sure chat can probably beat me to it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I heard on the radio that they're going to be playing the Super Cup. So really, are they going to be treating this Norwich game like
Wednesday the 14th? Wednesday the 14th.
Yeah, there we are then.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting one, and really, if you're going to go for the safest option possible in the Liverpool defence, it's Van Dijk and Robertson. Fact. It's just the fact that TAA is this guy that has got so much potential to be bringing us those attacking points, as we witnessed with your team last season. By the way, can I just bring up a point that Keyboy mentioned, that if if we bring in Jota or even Wesley, so if we bring in Jota, apparently we're going to have 1.5 million left over for this community team. If we bring in Wesley, we'll have 2 million. Is that correct? I mean, if it is, that's fine.
That's correct.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the case. So that's good then. So then we can
invest that. We can invest that. Yeah.
The
We can invest that money later into the season. We'll be doing transfers that are you guys are going to vote on the transfers. So basically, the team has been decided by you guys by voting in the Rate My Team channel and also now by the polls. Wesley is leading the polls by two votes. So if you haven't yet voted, please go into Discord and go under the poll vote here channel and click on one of the reactions. Number 1 for Wesley, number 2 for Jota, and number 3 for King. Steve, is there anything else you want to discuss before we possibly bring on a guest?
Yeah, I just wanted to make this point that I was listening to a podcast this morning, and I was just thinking like how people pick their teams. Maybe this is going to be a topic for one of our streams tomorrow or at any point next week. But a lot of the talk was about the eye test, looking at stats and everything, and I'm like, I don't give a here we go, Steve O'Ran. I don't care about them. All I care about is proven players and what they're literally bringing to the party. And for example, if Salah isn't performing well, see you later. I'm going to be bringing in a player which is performing well, and then I'll be able to upgrade somewhere. Let's just take, for argument's sake, Aubameyang goes crazy against Newcastle and Salah blanks, and then the following game week the same scenario happens, and I'm thinking, do you know what? See you later, Salah.
I'll be doing the same. I'll be doing Salah to KDB or something, and then Wilson to Aubameyang or something crazy. But it's
it's just the way I play the game. It's just because I'm even thinking of like looking at Martina. I'm like, I just want proven Premier League players. Like for instance, do I really want Ceballos? He's not proven Premier League. Just do a team like that's either a 3-5-2 or even a 3-4-3 or something with proven players. And then, because I was even thinking this, if I have one of my defenders not playing, it means that I don't have a bench player coming off. I never ever play the game like that. I think it's just too risky for me not to have a bench player coming off in case, for instance, Zinchenko doesn't start. It's like, brilliant. I knew the risks. I knew that Zinchenko wasn't a guaranteed first teamer. And I've taken that risk of not having a playing bench player. So, and just a quick one as well for Notorious Nerd. It does appear that Charlie Taylor is probably going to be the number 1 left back for us. So just to let you know, or anybody that's just deciding whether it's Charlie Taylor or Eric Peters, my personal opinion is that I would have thought that Sean Dyche would go for Premier League experience, and I mean real experience because he did really well at Stoke. But based on yesterday's pre-season, we won 2-0 versus Parma. I think that, and Charlie Taylor started, I think that maybe Sean Dyche is just keeping faith with the defence that ended last season that did so well. And so it'd be Matthew Lawton, however you want to pronounce it, Tarkowski, Ben Mee and Charlie Taylor. And I think maybe it could be Jay Rodriguez partnering Woods as well up front. It looks like Sean Dyche isn't playing Ashley Barnes, which I'm surprised as much. He is that little Rockweiler that just goes around nicking the ball off players and putting in the hard tackles. So, so Notorious Nerd, I know you're here now. So Charlie Taylor looks like it's going to be a safe bet, but I still would rather have Nick Pope personally. But he apparently played really well yesterday as well, Nick Pope. Okay. And I was really pleased for Tom Heaton. He's really good as well.
I don't think there's going to be a massive difference in point scores between these options in budget goalkeepers over the first 16 weeks, to be honest with you.
FPL Boone are asking, Tarkowski missed out yesterday, which is correct. Could he be on his way out to Leicester? I've heard no news. Usually Dyche is very, very secretive when it comes to things like this, and it has happened before. I can't think right now off the top of my head about this, but it does remind me of occasions, and possibly he could be going, but I think Dyche's comments was he's really, really happy with the squad at the moment, and he's pretty confident that it's all going to be staying the same. So, but yeah, FPL Villa just quickly saying that Gibson at 4 million. If Gibson is, let's just say for argument's sake, Thursday comes along, Tarkowski's gone, getting Gibson for 4 million, and I'd happily have him as my 4 million playing, well, hopefully playing defender. Sorry, Jason.
No, it's fair enough. Absolutely. Okay, so guys, we will be taking a few guests on this evening. We've talked about the community team. We'll be talking about the results in the poll as well later on in the stream. If you're interested in talking to us about your team, how you're getting on, maybe you may have not called into the show before and you don't know what it's about, come onto our Discord. We'll drag you in. Just go in the waiting room and we'll get you on the show. There's a lot to talk about. When I did my solo podcast on Friday night, if you watched it, almost every team that we had joining us that evening was a completely unique team with different strikers, with different midfielders. I'm thinking, this is incredible. We had so many different selections, and it's just great to hear the thought processes that go into those selections. It can help me, it can help you guys in determining what your final 11 will be, or your final 15 will be, come game week 1 deadline. And I know you guys, as well as me, will all be pretty sweating come 7 o'clock Friday night.
Can we bring on Phil first of all? I mean, his team's at 1850, just to let you know, but he also wants to talk the community team as well. I know that much because he said the other day.
1750. Bear with me.
1850.
1850. Okay, 1 second.
So 352 for me.
Yeah, I got him. Hi Phil, you're live on the FPL call-in with Steve-O and myself. Welcome.
How's it going, guys? You good?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much, Phil. I've got your team up on stream, on the screen at the moment. Very interesting. Going with the 3-5-2 formation. I noticed you got the armband on Kane. Is this is this a serious choice that you've made, or is this just because you're feeling?
At the moment, after today's things, I'm a bit worried about the TAA situation. I may go to Robertson. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because you just.
My moment was.
Yes.
My biggest.
Sorry, man. No, sorry, you keep pausing. I think you caused. Yeah, okay. Finish what you're going to say. Sorry.
Yeah, my thing what I was solving at the moment was my keeper situation. I did have Fabianski and he's took a knock, so I'm not sure if he's going to start. I know Man City's not a great game, first game of the season, but he was going to be my set and forget. So I decided to look at Chelsea assets because I was going to think of a defender. And I think Kepa was their 4th overall point scorer last season. So I've gone with him at the moment. But everyone else is rating Heaton and Pope, so I may downgrade to him.
Interesting pick. I mean, I've strayed away from Chelsea players. And I've thought about having Chelsea defenders in. But that thought kind of fizzles out when I look at other options like Tottenham, Everton, and obviously Wan-Bissaka, which you've got in your team. I'm just looking at that midfield, and you've got a very well balanced team. You've got money in the front line, you've got money in the midfield. You haven't got Salah. In fact,
I'm not worried about that.
I can tell you. Obviously, today's game hasn't kind of swayed you towards the form of Salah.
The one that it's pushed me more to is maybe when I downgrade Kane after game week 2 is bringing in Sterling is the one that I'm more worried about. I think Sterling's literally the essential player.
So you're saying downgrade Kane for game week 2, but
yeah, my plan for game week 2 is Moura Wilson out to become Kane and Haller. But then I've got the option with Kane whether to keep him. But Kane's another one. I think he's going to have a crazy season as well.
Are you not considering the Aubameyang switch if Aubameyang starts the season solid?
No, Arsenal's Arsenal. Aubameyang can score if he does do well with Ceballos there. But then hopefully if I keep him through the season, I may get his assists and the odd free kick.
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, Steve, you got his team up in front of you. He's doubled up on Tottenham. He's got Lucas Moura and Kane. He's got the budget enabler Ceballos in his team, like myself, with a double up of Bournemouth in Fraser and Wilson. So for those on audio, he's got Kepa, Alexander-Arnold, Digne, Wan-Bissaka, De Bruyne, no Sterling, Sigurdsson, Fraser, Lucas Moura, Ceballos, Wilson, Kane, and on his bench he's got Wesley, the powerhouse of Wesley, Rico, and Target. Now, Steve-O, what's your initial thoughts on this team?
No Sterling. Straight away, just no Sterling. Well, my initial instant reaction was I love the bench. I like the fact that you've got Wesley and a playing defender as well. I do like that. It's just that you haven't got that heavy hitting midfielder. I'm fully aware that Kevin De Bruyne will be getting you across the whole season a minimum of double-digit assists and up to the high single digits of a goal. We're talking between 7 and 9 goals per season, as proven in the past. But it's that fear factor of not having Salah, but that explosiveness that Sterling can get you. And I just look and I just think there isn't that premium midfielder that most people should have. I will tell you now that Fabianski is going to be fine. So if you want Fabianski back in your team, he should be absolutely fine, not a problem at all. Your 3-man defence.
Well,
brilliant.
then if I was to go Fabianski, then after game week 2, I could go Kane to Vardy, and then that gives me 2 mil to try and find a way in. Then I could just go upgrade De Bruyne to Sterling, but. Like De Bruyne, like I think you said on the other day, or it might have been on Planet FPL's podcast earlier. De Bruyne's basically a new signing this season.
Yes,
they didn't hardly have him last year.
But all I can say is that I hear so many people on this show come on, like yourself, and they say, "Oh, my plan is to swap X player out for game week 2. It never happens. I love it. It never, ever happens because we all know how FPL works. And I can guarantee you now on Friday evening when Salah goes and gets us that double-digit haul,
even then, I'm not worried. Salah will not be on my team the whole season. 100%.
Phil,
I'm going to bookmark that.
I'll tell you what. If I put him in my team and I win this Discord thing, I'll donate all the money to charity if I win it. If I put Salah in my team.
Here we go, everybody. This is me getting competitive now. I'm slowly getting into that. Well, we've only got a week. Well, it's less than a week now. I don't care about people's teams. I only care about my team. So I'm happy to.
That's why I didn't want to post my team in the Rate My Team at the moment. I was going to go full MI5 hush on everything. One thing I did want to just mention while I'm on the stream, people that are going double Liverpool defence, I think that's so risky in the first 10, 12 games. I looked at the first, if you get their first 10, 12 fixtures up, I honestly only see them maybe keeping 5 clean sheets in all them games. So then that's effectively 35 points if you bring in a defender from another team, possibility of them getting a clean sheet.
What, we're talking about Liverpool now?
Yeah.
So obviously, where you're thinking they're going to drop clean sheets, then you think that they're Norwich at home? Do you think Norwich have got the ability to sneak a goal? I mean, they've got really nice fixtures. They've got obviously Arsenal at home. I mean, I'll give you that. Chelsea away, but I would expect Burnley away, Newcastle at home, Sheffield United away, Southampton. Okay.
Well, Steve will tell you that Burnley's one of the greatest teams in the Premier League. Am I wrong, Steve?
What I would say is that actually, when we play Liverpool, the games are actually really tight. It's just that we just end up capitulating the last 10 minutes and we end up conceding 2 or 3 goals. And the scoreline makes it look like it was an easy game. Reality is it wasn't. Yeah. And I can see us scoring against Liverpool. So...
And especially with VAR, I think it completely changes. I just think it's too much of a risk that you're just giving away the opportunity of making him 35 points. I'm of the belief that you should have 4 different teams, 4 or 5 different teams in defence.
Something I've learnt this across the shows that we've been doing is that, like you've just said, Phil, spread your money across the defence rather than sticking to one specific team. I'm pretty confident in that. I think that it's better to double up in attack with, like you've done with Kane and Lucas Moura, like I've done with De Bruyne and Sterling, for example, because you know that these particular players are more than likely going to get you something. Or even Wilson and Fraser. I loved Wilson and Fraser double up. I think it's absolutely sublime. But I can't wait till Friday. Cannot wait.
It's a strong team, and I tell you what, if Salah blanks, you could be absolutely rubbing your hands together, and I will be more than happy to have you on the show come Game Week 1 weekend, and you to be like, you know what, everyone in chat and you guys were kind of looking at me thinking, no Salah, and I held true. And I would love it. I would absolutely love it, because you're not giving into peer pressure. You've got your own mindset. You've got your principles. And if you're going to go with your gut feeling, go with your gut feeling, because there's so many people that end up bottling it, because everyone on the forum sites are telling you that you've got to have Salah and Sterling in your team. You've not got either of those. You've got Kane. Okay, you may have to change Kane out, obviously, depending.
Well, that's the play. I think Son's possibly maybe a better asset for Spurs. So then once Kane becomes Vardy, then I'll have Son in my team. So Son will be my only top asset.
Phil, I like it because you've got your principles and you're sticking to them. I appreciate it. I respect that. I respect that a lot. And you've got a playing bench. You've got Wesley on the bench as well. And I've got Dendoncker. But, I'd rather have Wesley than Dendoncker.
Okay. Before we let you go, Phil, what are your thoughts on the community team that you guys have voted for?
I'm over the moon that it's not got double Liverpool defence. Over the moon. we can win it without double Liverpool defence.
It was close. Van der Vaart. I keep calling him Van der Vaart. Van Dijk was close to nicking the spot ahead of Aaron Wan-Bissaka. So it was close, mate. But Aaron Wan-Bissaka, the new boy, the new trend, thanks to Jason, seems to have taken that spot.
He's a good player. I'm just bigging him up for the sake of it. He's a quality player, and he's now in a team with Maguire now. I think he's got even more potential to get clean sheets and get bonus points. But anyway, let's not go on about Wan-Bissaka.
Jason, what do you fancy our chances of winning the league are?
Man United's chances of winning this season will purely depend on the mindset of the players, and also how Ole Gunnar Solskjaer deals with the big names like Pogba. I looked at the preseason games, and I want to say right now that Matic just does not look like a Premier League player anymore. Like he's slow and lethargic on the ball. He gives the ball away. I'm not just talking about the last game, but I'm just talking in general. He's just a bit slow, a bit like and if they can get a solid CDM in place,
the replacement for Lukaku, I think he's going to help us out a lot this year.
Dybala.
I think Ollie might go for more. If we score more, then we're going to win the game. So with Wan-Bissaka and James on the other side.
Obviously James is new to the team. He's not had much to do in the pre-season. He's not had much involvement in terms of goals or attacking involvement, really, that I've seen. But what I am quite excited for is Rashford seems to be kind of up in his game a bit. He played really well and in pre-season, and I'm looking. Rashford and Martial are two players that I'm looking at. Hopefully, come the early wild card, we may have a dilemma on our hands. We may have to consider an attacking definitely. United option. I'd love it. But I'm just standing back from Man United in terms of attack at the moment.
Yeah.
Typing away.
The other thing I was going to ask, if anyone listens to podcasts, if they can just take 2 minutes and go to your guys' page and then like and rate the stream, give it a 5-star and help spread the word.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Phil. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say so. Yeah.
No worries, guys. Take care. Have a good show. I've got to get ready for work.
Take it easy, dude.
Cheers, Phil.
See you on tomorrow.
Speak later. Right. So that was Phil, and Phil is gone without Sterling and Salah in his team, and he's held fast to the belief that you don't need Salah, and I love it because I think that there's a lot of people who've got Salah in their team purely because of the peer pressure and because of the fear factor. And the people that take risks will either fall like a stone or they'll shoot up the leagues, depending, of course. There's such a risk not having Salah in my team. I'm not going to not have Salah, but I respect people that don't. We've got an update on the poll. We've got Wesley in a 4-point lead. Wesley has on Yotta at the moment in the poll vote here channel. That's in Discord. If you're not in Discord, !Discord in chat. We'll give you the link to go in to the Discord and you can vote on it. And why wouldn't you vote? It's your community team. This is your chance to put your team forward. It's a final player selection in the team. Who would you like to be the final partner for Wilson? Wesley, Jota, or King? Vote now. You've got about, to the end of the stream to do it.
I think before we get on, Ruddy Pogs Dina, which may give you a clue as to who he's picked for his 4-5-1 formation, which is at 1840. If you are completely brand new to the stream and you are watching us for the first time and you're enjoying what you're watching, just hit that subscribe button. And also, if you are watching live right now, just hit that like button and just show your support for the channel. But yeah, Jason, I think we should bring on Ruddy Pogs Dina and let's have a look at his 4-5-1. It's looking pretty good, and I don't think Phil's going to like the defence.
Ready, Pogs digging. Yeah, you're live on the FPL Talk, or the FPL Call-In, I should say, with myself and Steve-O. Welcome to the show. I've got your team up, the updated 4-5-1. Is that correct, team?
How you doing, guys? Nice to speak to you again.
Oh, welcome. Is it the 4-5-1 team that you posted that you want to talk about?
Although I didn't see anything today, so you'll have to excuse me on that. So I hear Ceballos has been benched. And Trent has also not looked very good. So I might have to reconsider if I catch up with that Liverpool and the
right.
The
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is pre-season. It's still early to say, but Ceballos, I mean, he has always been that risk in your team as well as my team as well. I see. We've got a sub with Michael Lawless. Thank you so much for that subscribe. But the question mark for me in your team is the same question mark that's in my team. That's Walker Peters. And now you've got Van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold in your team. Would you downgrade Alexander-Arnold to bring in Digne and another defender instead of Walker Peters to not have a fire that you need to put out, after game week 1?
Yeah, I think for me, Walker Peters in there. Bit of a kind of bookmark to see what happens with Chelsea, because I quite like the look of Emerson. He's 5.0, so I wouldn't touch him before. For
I was
me,
thinking maybe like an Aspilicueta pick or something instead of Walker Peters, or
No, I think that.
You've gone quiet, Ready? You're still there, dude.
I thought you interrupted. Sorry, I thought you were about to say something. So,
no, sir.
Yeah, for me, with Aspilicueta, he's again a wait and see. First game against United, my team. I'm not going to pick any Chelsea players, but I'm very keen to have either him or David Luiz or Emerson. It really depends what they look like in that first game to me. So, yeah, Walker Peters is just a bookmark.
Well, I've got Fast Air in chat saying Ceballos it has infiltrated this stream community. Terrible pick, always was.
I read that and I instantly kind of nodded my head, but not in agreement with the actual comment, but more to the point of what I was saying, which is he's not a Premier League proven player. I've got nothing against his talent. I've got nothing against what he's done in the past. It's just the fact that he's not a proven Premier. That is it, and that's why I'm serious. Because I look at your team here, Ruddy, and I think it's just my team basically, barring the fact that I've gone 3-5-2. But the majority of the players are exactly as I've gone. But I'm now thinking in my head, I'd rather just have a 4-4-2 and get rid of Ceballos, have Dendoncker, and maybe upgrade a plain defender. What are your thoughts on Fastair's chat about Ceballos then?
I agree with you. I think he's a risk. For me, it's like, do you play the 4 or maybe 4.5 defender, or do you play, take a risk on someone like Ceballos? So for the minute, I got Lundstrom. I'm hearing like there's Gibson and there's a couple of others who could potentially take that spot. I think it just depends who looks good night before we go live, really. Who's got the most chance of starting, what everyone's saying. I mean, if Ceballos isn't starting, we might have to have a little bit of a rethink on that one. But he looked really exciting. I probably did what everyone else did. I looked at the YouTube vids and, he just looks like a real player. So, there's not that many risks in the team. I think, there's a couple there. I've got Leno in goal currently. He's a bit of a bookmark for Fabianski as well. So there's kind of 2 or 3 players there where I probably will, consider changes. But that's kind of up to the wire, really.
I presume you've only got Leno in your team for save points.
He's going to be there for a week or 2. I think Newcastle, and then I forget who Arsenal are playing after that. But they've got 2 good fixtures. Yeah, Burnley, exactly. So 2 good fixtures, and then hopefully Fabianski's fit, and then he'll be my set and forget.
Okay, so we got Notorious Nerd in chat commenting on Ceballos again, saying would rather have McGinn in instead of Ceballos. I mean, I think going on the logic that neither are proven Premier League players, so it's toss a coin for me. I've gone with Ceballos. Others will go with McGinn if they've got a budget enabler. So yeah, kind of a mute argument really at the moment. So if you have Ceballos, you want to have a playing bench. That's what Ramsey Sinclair said. I've got Dendoncker on my bench. Don't worry, I can get great points from him when he comes on, I'm sure. One thing to think. Sorry, no, yeah. What were you going to say?
One thing is, I suppose you can get a 4.0 defender, or you get a 4.5 Dendoncker. So you do actually gain $500,000 there if you have a defender on the bench rather than a midfield. So I'm just kind of playing with that a little bit in the minute. I think potentially that does make a little bit of a difference.
Okay, so are you set? Are you kind of? You said you were thinking about TAA and switching out. I noticed comments in the stream were kind of like shocked that people are now trying to find ways of getting Trent out and saving some money up because of these
game, Jason.
Yeah, I know, because of these games. Well, I mean the was it Lyon? No, Napoli. The Napoli game. Obviously, the Napoli game where they were quite exposed at the back, kind of pricked people's ears up and thought, hang on a minute, Trent's not looking so certain at the moment and he's not had the great game. And I think what happened today is kind of reinforced and if not magnified their opinion that Trent is somehow not going to be anything like last season, which of course, I mean, it's pre-season, it's a Community Shield game. It's one of those where like a season's over 38 game weeks. And people seem to forget that it's not just about game week 1. And I mean, who you replace Trent Alexander-Arnold with, say that you replace him with, I don't know, for the sake of argument, I don't know, Digne. You bring him in, and over 8 game weeks, would you say that Digne is going to outscore Alexander-Arnold over 8 game weeks? Or even just over 4 game weeks? That's the sort of mindset you need to kind of ask yourself. Not just because you think the fixtures look good for Everton, and I'm not sure about Trent Alexander-Arnold. It's, you play for the long run. It's a season-long game. Obviously, you do chop and change in transfers. Steve-O, would you agree on that? Or are you kind of like in the mindset of like, Trent Alexander, TAA is kind of a bit of a risk now?
No, I think that Trent Alexander is a first teamer at the end of the day. I think that it'd be mad for Klopp to drop him over just a couple of pre-season games. Look how well he did last season.
Yeah.
I think though that potentially that his minutes may be managed a bit more.
But then if he comes off after the 60th minute and then they concede a late goal, you're loving it, aren't you? Well,
yes, of course. But from an FPL perspective, which is all I care about, he's got me the clean sheet point at the end of the day. That's all I care about is fantasy football. Before we let you go, Ruddy, just quick thoughts on the community team that the whole of the Elite FPL community have chosen that we were talking about earlier on.
I confess that I've joined a little bit late here today, guys.
Right, so... you're banned. Get rid of them, Jay.
No, but I'm very happy to contribute. I think out of the options you picked with a striker, I'd go for Jota, but I haven't had a chance to catch up. I literally joined a bit late today.
It looks like it's a very basic. I'll just. I'm sure Jason will bring it up.
I've got to read it if you like. We've got Pope in goal with Button as a sub keeper. We've got Kelly for Crystal Palace as a kind of sub fodder. We've got Digne, Alexander-Arnold, Zinchenko, and Wan-Bissaka as the back 4. With Fraser, Salah, Sterling, and Perez as a midfield 4. With Dendoncker on the bench, and we've got Wilson and with Wilson and someone else. with Greenwood on the bench at the moment. So we're waiting to see who's going to win in the polls.
Basically, I mean, I wouldn't go with Kane up front, but I think that the rest of it.
Well,
is
we're not going to get.
similar.
In fact, I'm going to take Kane off of there because we're not going to have Kane in the team. We can't have him as budget does not allow. So we're waiting to see who's going to win.
On Kelly as well. Do you guys have an update on Kelly? Has anyone seen a lot of games? Because I thought he was kind of.
Apparently, he's played quite a lot of minutes, to be honest with you. So I think if you stay on air now, Jason, if you want to talk about Martin Kelly, I'll be able to find out exactly how many minutes he's played.
Yeah. So basically, the question really is, Ruddy, who, in your opinion, would you like to see Wilson in the community team partnered with? Would you like Wesley in it, Jota or King out of the three? And have you voted? Have you voted yet?
No, I'd vote Jota. I think he's the most proven. I think he was the one that scared me last year, towards the end of last year. I didn't know anything about him at the start of the year, but I think by the end he was very, very consistent for his price. He seems like the obvious pick.
Okay. Well, at the moment, Wesley's leading in the polls over Jota. There's 20 votes for Wesley in the Discord polls. If you haven't yet voted, guys, we're going to keep telling you throughout the stream. Go into our Discord. It's a free app on your phone, on your laptop, on your PC. Get into the vote channel and vote for that final position in our community team. It's going to be either one of three. It's either going to be Wesley, Jota, or King. Looking at it so far, it's looking like Wesley's going to get that position, but it can all change.
Yeah, and just to answer your question, Ruddy, about regarding Martin Kelly, surprise, surprise, when I actually want something to load up, it doesn't. And yeah, I can't load it up, unfortunately, but I'm pretty sure off the top of my head.
Someone in chat can tell us about Martin Kelly. But thank you, Ruddy. I mean, thank you ever so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, no, best of luck with it, and hope to catch you as soon as it all kicks off. And
it's gonna be a messy stream. I think game week 1 in the Friday night. I think there's gonna be a lot of drama coming up. But thank you, Ruddy, and speak soon.
Speak soon, guys. Ciao.
Awesome. Got Cap King Gaming in chat. Hey, Elite, when's the next meetup? When's the meetup? Well, whenever. Just give us a DM on Twitter. Clement LaRue in chat says, hey, brother. No, sell Wilson. Sell them all. We don't want to sell Wilson. We've already chosen all of the positions. We've just got that one final because we couldn't afford Kane in the team. We've got to choose the last pick, and that's going to be Wesley, Jota, or King.
Just want to say, Jason, we have got record viewing figures right now, so congratulations to everybody watching the stream. And if you are enjoying the stream right now, just hit that like button. It just shows your support. And if you are brand new to this stream and you're enjoying what you're watching, it's just going to come more and more every single day. So hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button, and away we go.
Absolutely. All of next week, you'll see regular streams from us for every evening, actually, next week. We're going to try and structure them. We're going to have call-ins. We're going to be talking about our predictions for the Premier League and where we think the teams are going to sit and who is going to be in the top 4 and who's going to potentially be relegated. We're also going to talk about our own individual teams as well, any changes that we're going to be making in our teams, any transfer news or any injury news that we come across. Obviously, Sané is probably not in everyone's team at the moment, but I know a few people that have come on air have talked about him being in their team as a budget choice for Man City. I actually really want to get KDB in my team, so maybe I'll be able to find a way of getting him in my team as well as Harry Kane. Doubtful as well to have Sterling and Salah, Kane and KDB. But yeah, we've got a few more people in the waiting room.
Can we get
I'm going to quickly just read a few comments out, if that's all right, Steve-O, because the chat's been flying. And Woody17 in chat. We've got Block FPL as well in chat as well. He's laughing at the prospect of selling Wilson for Bournemouth. Block FPL, of course, being a massive advocate of Bournemouth start of the season. Woody17.
He had Adam Smith in his video he did the other day. I just rolled my eyes thinking, nah, not for me. But yeah, check out his video, everybody.
Anyway. Absolutely. Check him out on YouTube, and also Capkin Gaming as well, who's also an FPL content creator in chat. We've got Woody17 saying, Pepe, what are we saying? Well, I kind of addressed it on Friday myself. I think Steve-O hasn't yet done it on camera. I think a lot of the community members in Discord have got the same opinion, and it's a massive wait and see. There's obviously players that are now joining into the Premier League where, like, Moise Keane is another example. Ceballos, another example. People may not want to risk on these players come game week 1, but the beauty of the early wildcard, if you're going to play that early wildcard, I played my wildcard last season, game week 4, and after that I was pretty much cemented in the top 1,000 up until probably game week 28, 29, and I kind of started to drop out. So it does benefit for identifying players at an early stage that you feel are going to perform well in their teams, like the Pepes, like the Ceballos. And there's a sub. Thank you ever so much for that, Jay Kimani. Thank you. But yeah, going to read some comments. Hicks76 says, congrats. We've got record viewer numbers. Thank you ever so much for being here, guys. If you just stumbled across the channel, do what? Wow, another subscriber, Top Football. Thank you for the subscribe. It probably get to the point where we're gonna have to take off the music for that, because it may be a bit repetitive. Man City and Leicester eyeing up to buy Ake. Thoughts, says Mark Antigua in chat. I mean Ake. I mean, at Man City, I'll be straight on that. And if he went to Leicester, I would be too. What about you, Steve-O?
I agree. I
Bit
think
of a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah, he's done. Well, I don't know about buying him, but as in from a fantasy football perspective, from a real life perspective, I think it would be a very, very good buy indeed.
It'd be a cheap way into the Man City defence.
And it would be another Chelsea player which has left Chelsea and gone on to bigger and better things and proven, well, what idiots they are when it comes to selling top quality players. But that's a story for another day.
So Hicks76 actually agrees on me about going early on the wild card. It is an option. It's definitely an option, depending on your team, of course. Thoughts on Glenn Murray? Question mark, says well lad in chat. Is he still playing football? Yeah, he's a risk. He's a risk for minutes, and I mean he's a goal scorer. Don't get me wrong. He is a good goal scorer, but he's just a risk. He's a headache waiting to happen. He really, really is. I wouldn't be going for him myself. John Fox in chat says, add a crowd cheer instead of the music for a new subscription. I thought about that. I actually thought about putting the crowd cheer in. But, Steve, what do you think about putting the crowd cheer in when we get a subscriber? I think it would get annoying. Yeah. I think it would get annoying, wouldn't it?
Well, you're the tech guy, so it's down to you.
Let's ask the chat that what should we do? Should we have it muted? Should we have a crowd cheer? Or do you like the music? You may like the music, but anyway, moving away from that, thoughts on Mandzukic? Mandusic. Don't know much about him, Anurag. Don't know anything about him. What about you, Steve-O?
He's the greatest Italian striker ever, isn't he? Whatever flaming team he comes from. But he's one of those impact subs, isn't he, for Juventus? If he goes to Man United. Apparently United are going to be giving Lukaku away, and then you're going to get Dybala and Mandzukic. But who knows? Who knows? I don't even think it will happen in the end. I think it will just keep Lukaku.
Is it all Sun? Is this all from the Sun or something? Because it's always like...
Yeah, he's Croatian.
Right, okay. Anyway, so people are saying crowd cheers. Thoughts on what Cancelo for Man City? For the left back from Cancelo. Who's Cancelo? Who's Cancelo, Steve-O?
I have no idea.
I was thinking about Angelino.
Yeah, Angelino.
Yeah, I think. Are you talking about Angelino, or are we talking about non-Premier League footballers at the moment? Sounds good, mate. Blah, 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 blah. Croatian, Steve-O. He's apparently Croatian.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, Cancelo of Juventus. Right. I've no idea. We're going off topic.
Yeah. So get next guest in. Next guest coming in is
Oedipus, because his team's up. It's 1927. It looks like a very good 4-5-1 formation.
Oedipus, you're live on the FPL Call in. Welcome to the stream. Can you hear me? Oedipus, can you hear me? You got yourself muted, by the way.
Oh, Oedipus. Just when I was bigging you, okay, let's get rid of him and let's bring on Josh Thacker. He has just got in the waiting room and his team's just above Oedipus at 1917.
Josh, are you there? Can you hear us? You're live on the FPL Call in. Welcome. Hello.
Oh,
Hello, Josh. How you doing?
good, good. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going great. I'm just gonna have to resize this because it's not showing all of your team. But yeah, talk us through your team, Josh.
Can you see my team right
Yeah,
now?
I've got it here. Got it right in front of me.
Uh, I guess I have a decent team for now after like 4 or 5 drafts that I've made.
Okay.
I have a little.
For the people listening on audio, we're going to go through it. So he's got Ryan in goal with a heart. We've got Wan-Bissaka, Robertson, Zinchenko, Lundstrom, Gilbert, Gilbert, whatever. Got Fraser, Barkley, Pereira, another manager with Pereira, Salah, Dendonka, Wilson, Vardy, and Kane. Wow. Okay. So it's a heavy hitting team. It's got goals in that team.
I feel it's a heavy hitting team, but I don't know if I guess in one game if anyone doesn't play, I'm really thinking about that Bournemouth double up right now because I feel that Sheffield and Aston Villa might keep a clean sheet in the start of the season.
Nasty Balls in
Like,
chat has actually said, I'm detecting no City in that team. Are you not worried about not having any Man City attackers in that team?
I'm planning to get Aguero with that 1 million adjustment if I can. Right now I don't have any adjustment.
Planning getting him Aguero, okay.
After seeing the Community Shield, I feel that De Bruyne is a must get. I feel because he's playing inside. Too many chances today.
I think that there's so much money invested in your front three that the midfield has lacked a bit of teeth. You've got a decent defence. It's just the midfield, which is just, I don't know, Pereira. A couple of people in chat are saying about Pereira being, is he going to be nailed? Is he going to get you them points that that you're going to be needing come game week 1? I mean, you're basically betting on Wilson, Vardy, and Kane in that team, and obviously you've got Salah's kind of we've all got Salah in their team, so it doesn't make any difference. But the Fraser Wilson partnership, I'm sure Steve-O will like. Barkley is a wait and see for me in the Premier League. Another one that could potentially just die out and just go back to being his usual self for Chelsea. He's had an explosive pre-season, but I think that there's a few issues that you might need to address come game week 3, game week 4, and I think that when you try to build for game week 1, you don't want to have too many fires to put out. And Steve-O, go on, let's go for the jugular. Go on, what are you going to say?
I'm liking the fact that it's a 3-4-3 formation. I would advise against Joe Hart. Nick Pope's back now, so he'll be playing instead.
So it's I think one of the Burnley keepers, I guess.
Yeah, it'll be Nick Pope. You don't need to worry about that. Nick Pope will be fit for the game week 1. Like I said, I do like the fact that you're going 3-4-3. I think that the midfielders you've got are all key. I always state this: so long as they're key to their teams and they're the main attacking focal point, which those 4 are. I know Pereira, wherever he plays, but he is one of the main guys at Watford. And the front 3 is just beautiful, absolutely fantastic. And do you know what? For a 3-4-3, I really, really like it, Jason.
Okay. Oh. There you go. You got an endorsement from Steve-O. So, Josh, there you go. You're going to keep that team game week 1.
Hopefully. I'm just worried for that De Bruyne cover. That's it. Or else I can, minus 4 on the second keeper, and later on 5.5 or 5 million player for Pereira or Barkley, and can have that Aguero cover also later on.
No, I like. Okay, I mean, you've got a plan. I mean, the team is a bit of what if, Barkley and Pereira. I mean, it's just I just look at Barkley and Pereira and I think I wouldn't be expecting too much from them. But obviously, you're going to potentially make up from that with the powerhouse attack that you've got. So it swings.
Powerhouse attack with Aubameyang also. I can switch it for the
game week 2.
So Aubameyang for game week 2, then Kane or I can switch that. once I guess I'm planning to keep Wilson for like, at least first 8 games,
Okay.
5 games.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, Bournemouth fixtures are too good to let up on, really. But okay. Well, it seems you got a plan, and thank you for sharing your team, Josh. I mean, I haven't really got much more to say. Steve-O likes it, so it'll be interesting to see where you are come Friday night.
Ah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. That'll be
Anything you want to
something.
say before we get on the next caller?
I guess that just one doubt: should I get Robertson or Alexander Arnold? That's the only choice. Dilemma in defense
Well,
for me right now.
Well, at the moment, everyone's going through the crisis of whether or not to keep Alexander Arnold in. I think, well, I say everyone. I say that there's rumours that that the FPL community are swapping out Alexander Arnold for Van Dijk, but I think Robertson, like Steve-O said, is nailed. I think TAA is nailed as well. To be fair, it's
I guess
yeah.
TA
I
is as well.
I don't think you. I mean, it's flip a coin for me. I would personally have TAA over Robertson though.
Because in the preseason he was seen like taking free shot practices and everything, and
Yeah,
he's on for
yeah. I mean, I would go TAA.
only last dilemma for me in the defense. Next is, I guess I'm confident. Let's see what happens
You
from
see
game.
what happens. Absolutely, Jasper. Thank you for coming on. Cheers now.
Cheers.
Cheers now. Well, so that's another team that's different. So a different team.
Well, there's a
completely.
there's a different team in Skink 97, 1937. He posted his team. He's on their waiting room at the moment, and this has got an interesting pick in there.
Do you want to drag him in?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Skink 97. You are live on the Elite FPL Call in. Welcome to the show, and
Hi.
good evening. You have got a very, very interesting pick in your team in that man, Pepe. Now, I think this is a bit of a joke team. I think that you're deliberately picking players which you're not going to be choosing for game week 1. But please correct me if I'm wrong.
Trust me, bro. I'm telling you, Pepe will be a hit. Mark my words, man. Mark these words on stone. Pepe will be a hit for Arsenal.
Interesting.
Okay.
Why'd you say that?
Because if you check this, since even Drogba himself came from what people tend to call the Farmers League, the French league, and Hazard as well became a hit coming from the same team. And I've seen this guy. I was lucky enough to see this guy play once, and he was amazing. So with the current Arsenal coach and system, I think they got this signing spot on. So that's why I went for him. But the only thing I'm worried about is he didn't feature in the last game of Arsenal's preseason. So I might wait like for game week 1 and 2, and then have him back in game week 3 or something.
I don't think that Pepe is going to be starting for Arsenal until maybe the Burnley game. He may make his home debut versus Burnley, and he'll probably tear us a new one on that. In fact, maybe you want to bookmark this moment, Jason, where Steve-O's saying that Pepe versus Burnley, that'll be the day when he opens his account and everybody's going to try and jump on him as the bandwagon because Kevin De Bruyne hasn't done anything for the first 2 games for City. But you've also gone with Allaire. That's how you pronounce it, Allaire.
Yeah.
It's a very good pick, and one of our regular contributors, Boas Rice, thinks that he's going to do really, really well for West Ham.
Yeah. The thing is, Haller is not only a striker, but he also works for the team. He also will be like he's not a one-man team. He also provides as well. So he's set to give out some assists, and I think his partnership with Lanzini and Anderson will be pretty much spot on. Trust me.
You haven't gone with a heavy-hitting defense. I'm assuming this is because you want to bolster your attack.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm a risk taker, so this I have 2 million left in my bank because I want to see how much Moise Kean will cost. Because I was planning on bringing him instead of Nketiah, so I'll probably switch Nketiah for Kean, and then I won't change my defense, but probably the goalkeeper is what I'll change to someone else.
So if Moise Kean comes in at 6.5,
I'm definitely getting
you're
him.
definitely getting him in ahead of him. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, and you don't have an issue with choosing players which aren't quote unquote Premier League proven, i.e. Pepe, Allaire, Keane. You could even argue maybe Walker Peters possibly.
The thing is, I tend not to go with the crowd because, trust me, it will be kind of boring since if, say, Salah scores, but everyone else got Salah, so you all go up together. So I'm kind of looking for the, the black sheep, you would call them.
Have
Some
you?
people, some who are like have a good chance of shining, but not everyone is keen on them. They're all just waiting. So I'll probably just take my wildcard with them and see if it works out or not. But I'm definitely going with a black sheep, you might call them. I'm just going with them.
Have you tried this? Have you used this strategy before?
Yes, I've used it towards the end of last season. Is when I kind of did that. It worked out in some cases, but some cases here's the thing, it's like a 50% chance. It might backfire on you, but well, this is football. It's all a business of waiting till your opponent makes a mistake and of utilizing that mistake. So
I've already kind of made this point, but Alex Summerson made the point. One of the top 5 rules in fantasy football is never choose new players from different leagues. They very rarely hit the ground running, and it takes a lot of time to acclimatise to the Premier League. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if that was the case, no one would have taken Aubameyang last season. But look at how that turned out.
And talking about Aubameyang, he's just scored against Barcelona.
Look at that.
There we go.
But
Aubameyang bandwagon, anybody?
But I'm telling you, the partnership between Aubameyang, Lacazette, and Pepe is bound to be a great hit. That looks solid. That's gonna be solid because these guys are fast and they're pretty much, I don't know, brutal in attack. If they get the ground running, they'll be really solid. That's what I'm banking on. I'm just hoping Pepe gets his minutes, man.
Yeah, I'd like to think he was well. Skink, just one final question. What are your thoughts on this elite community team that you guys have all been voting on over the past 48, 72 hours?
I haven't voted yet.
But you must have seen it on the screen or at some point when we were choosing it earlier on. We just
are you showing it on?
It's on the screen now. But we're gonna probably close the votes in the next 10 or so minutes. So it's a good point to just announce that if you want to vote on it, go into Discord. It's in the channel at the top under rules and information under poll votes. Go in. We've got currently, oh my god, Jota is 1 point in the lead. Is taking the lead.
Oh. So it's between him and Wesley.
So it's been between Jota and Wesley at the moment. Jota's in the lead. You've got 10 minutes. So at 8 o'clock GMT, we'll be closing that poll, and we'll be deciding a second striker for our community team.
Okay.
Thank you for
Thank
you for joining us, Skink. Much appreciated.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, look forward to having you on again. Well, so yeah, just a reminder, guys, again, just to vote away. I'm going to read out some of the things in chat because I know you guys are talking away as well. Let's see the new draft. So we've got Dan Bull in chat, tempting. So yeah, we're going to look at the Aubameyang scoring tonight against Barcelona. Will there be a Aubameyang bandwagon? People that have got Kane in their team, like myself, will they switch to Aubameyang? Who knows? Just because of a pre-season game. So we've got more boredom. Says, well, we've got
right there, Jason.
Yeah, we've got a tip, a super chat, a $1 super chat. We've got a $1 super chat. Thank you ever so much, Yanks, for that super chat. It's much appreciated. Yanks 2050 125. Thank you ever so much. That'll go towards Steve-O's camera that he's getting in the post. Thank you so much for that. So yeah, people are talking about the Aubameyang goal, and yeah, watching from South Africa, says Paul J in chat. welcome. We get quite a lot of South African viewers, don't we, Steve-O, actually?
Yes.
And from Australia as well. South Africa, Australia. We've got quite a few from India, and looking at you guys, you're from all over the world. It's crazy. Even South America, we've got callers from South America that come on. So yeah, we're good. Just going through all the chat. I think you guys are just talking to each other, really. Regarding Jota, Shane McGuinness says Wolves have got tough fixtures for the first 5. They do, and obviously they've got Europa to worry about too. But it's all down to what you vote, and if you want to have Jota in, you guys are going to have him in.
Absolutely,
all
I
right,
completely agree. And Yanks is coming from, surprise, from the United States of America. Absolutely fantastic. Amazing. Fellow countryman in there, Block FPL too.
Yeah, Block FPL. I think he's from Ohio. Remind me, Block. I think you're from Ohio. Next, we've got a guest that's been waiting in the waiting room for a while. His name's Alan J94. Alan J, we're going to get you on the show in a second. Make sure that your mic's unmuted and you're not listening to the stream, please. I'm going to have a look to see if I can see his team in the Rate My Team channel. Yanks, if you could do us a favor and post it if you haven't already.
I'll do some quick. I'll do some quick admin while you're looking for
absolutely.
Thing. So at the moment we've got record viewers. Basically, it's absolutely phenomenal. We're nearly hitting the 200 mark, which is absolutely insane. If you could go and tweet about everybody to go and join us live right now would be absolutely awesome. If you are brand new to this stream and you haven't subscribed and you're enjoying what you are watching, by all means hit that subscribe button. We are streaming every day next week, so come on, join us live every single day. Also, if you are enjoying the stream right now, just simply hit that like button and it just shows your support. Easy peasy. I believe Alan's live on air, so Alan, welcome to the Elite FPL Call in, my friend. Hello, Alan. You are live. Is his team up, Jason?
His team's up, yeah. So he's got Ryan in
Hello,
goal.
how are you guys?
Oh, I'm great, Alan. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Oh, I think you may be listening back to
I think don't listen to us on the stream. You need to mute the stream and talk to us in Discord. But he's got Ryan in goal. He's got Robertson, Van Dijk, Zinchenko, and Digne. I like the look of this team. Wow. Okay, it's a pretty template team.
It's the FPL community template team from about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
Hello?
Salah, Sterling, Sigurdsson, Perez. Yeah, we can hear you, Alan. Can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Brilliant. Where are you calling from, Alan?
I'm from the United States.
Oh, another one from the United States. So whereabouts in the United States are you from, Alan?
Rhode Island, Providence.
Rhode Island, all the way from Rhode Island. Okay, so when did you set this team up, and have you made much change to it?
To be honest, I've been changing my team pretty much every single day.
Wow.
I've been trying different lineups. I've been trying 5-3-2. I've been trying 3-4-2, but I think this one is the most nailed on as of right now.
Okay, so you've been changing your team a lot, but we've kind of gone back towards the kind of template in the safe picks. I mean, double Liverpool. First question I want to ask with double Liverpool, are you a little bit concerned that their clean sheet potential may not be as high as we first thought? Or are you kind of ignoring the pre-season games because you think at the end of the day it shouldn't be you shouldn't be going off those?
Honestly, I'm not that worried. Usually my strategy tends to be to go with the bandwagon until about New Year's. And then I spread out and pick the players that I think are going to perform better than others. But I think that both Liverpool and Man City, they are going to have the most clean sheets throughout the season. And since I plan to use my wild card later on, after game week 10, I think that's going to be the safest bet for me.
Okay, so you're going to be using your wildcard after game week 10, regardless of how your team performs in the first 5 or 6 game weeks then?
I mean, unless I get a bunch of injuries or something unexpected, I plan to use my wildcard later on, after the first 2 months per se.
Absolutely, that's fine. I mean, we have got another super chat here from Ruddy Digne. We've got
Ruddy.
we've got a call. We're gonna have to listen to the text to speech. Hang on a second.
Ruddy Dogs Denia donated £5 through Super Chat. For the new mic. No cheap vodka Steve-O.
So for the new mic, he donates $5. No cheap vodka, Steve-O. Steve-O will have to have the vodka bottle ready again, I think, Friday night. What do you think? I might even join you. I might even join you if you agree to it. But thank you, Ruddy. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. We do appreciate everyone that donates to the ongoing project that is this channel. But we've got Alan J on air. He's talking about his team. It's pretty template. So it's a lot full of safe picks, to be honest with you. Very, very safe picks. Are you looking at any changes to that team at all going forward this week, or are you pretty set with it now?
Yes, I was mostly worried about Everton, to be honest with you. Even though I'm a huge Liverpool fan, I've been checking on Everton, and throughout July, they haven't scored that many goals. I believe they scored only one. So I'm thinking switching Sigurdsson to Bernardo Silva and just tripling up on Man City as well.
Okay.
Since I think they will perform pretty well.
Okay, so Bernardo Silva. That's a name that I don't hear much of in the Man City midfield. I know he had a great season last year. Pep loves him. That's pure? That's obviously due to money. But you've obviously got Sterling at the moment. Are you not tempted with any other sort of mid picks at all? Like not even like outside picks like Zaha?
Well, that's the thing. I assume and I expect that this week big transfers are gonna happen. So I'm definitely open of tweaking my team depending on what transfers happen. I don't know where Zaha is gonna go. He may still go to Arsenal, even though now I doubt it. There were rumors that he can go to Liverpool, which again I kind of doubt it. But depending if to be fair, even if big transfer happen, I won't be inclined to transfer him, just because I'm gonna give him probably 2-3 weeks just to get used with the new team, anyways.
Paul J in chat says Bilver and Sterling had almost the same points per million last year, and I mean now obviously if there is an injury to Sane and that's that extra slot. I mean I don't think Sane was a sure starter anyway, but if Bernardo Silva's guaranteed minutes and is in that City team come game week 1 onwards, I mean it's a great price point to have in that City midfield, especially if you haven't got with KDB, but you have got Sterling, of course. So Bernardo Silva isn't a bad pick by any suggestion. I just wanted to know if you considered any other players at the same point.
I'm also thinking that it may happen. I assume that Aguero's also going to be heavily rotated this season. Just because of his age.
Well, yeah, this is something which I'm hearing a lot of. I mean, I don't know if chat wants to chime in and give me their opinions as well, but this whole thing about Aguero suddenly being rotated, going to be lacking minutes. Do we honestly think that Aguero is going to be benched game week 1 and Jesus is going to get the pick of the minutes? There's going to be rotation, but I think it's more likely that Aguero is going to play 60 plus minutes, or hopefully 60 plus minutes. I think in those 60 minutes, we were talking about it last season when I had Aguero in my team and he was coming off at like 60 minutes or 59 minutes. In that time, he can easily score 2 or 3 goals. Like such is the quality of Aguero. I do find it amazing that there's so many people just completely ignoring him. I just want to see what the chat is saying about him.
Well, for a second, I've got some breaking news.
I'm not saying that he won't be playing at all. I'm just saying that his minutes are going to be more managed. Therefore, Pep is probably going to do some fancier rotations. And that's why I assume Bernardo Silva is going to see more time on the pitch this season.
Yeah, okay. I take the point. I do take the point. And obviously Sterling, at the price point he's at, is again today had a great game today in the Community Shield, and he's the preferred pick. I completely get it, and I've done it myself, so I can't really argue that. But it is interesting to see across the Elite FPL community at least that there seems to be no interest in Aguero at all. It is mind blowing considering you know, who he is and what he's done for Man City. Gabriel de Rops chat says problem with Aguero is his 12 million price point. We'll wait and see. Would it be surprising, Steve? I'm going to ask you now. Would it be surprising early wildcarders rushing to get Aguero in? Would you be surprised?
Mate, this is what I love about this game. I'm telling you now, on game week 1, right? On game week 1, I'm telling you now, there's going to be a bandwagon where everybody is just going to be like, why didn't I bring that guy in?
Hang on a sec. We've got another donation.
I'm seeing it here.
We've got a super chat.
Hashtag donated £5 through super chat. He's one of our own. He's one of our own. Harry Kane, he's one of our own. Keep up the great work, chaps. Subs hit and record viewers. Hashtag blame Boona.
Harry Kane is one of our own, says Boona. Thank you ever so much for that £5 donation. Honestly, you don't have to do this. Honestly, it's there if you want to support a stream. You've done enough to support the stream, Bruno. You don't need to do any more than what you've done. And thank you ever so much. 1.2k subs hit. That's incredible. Can we get to the 15? I'm telling you now, guys. I'm not selling out. Okay, I'm not selling out. But I said on the stream on Friday that if we get 1500, because I still think that that's not doable. But if we get 1500 come Friday, I will keep the captaincy on Harry Kane, if I don't transfer him out to Aubameyang. But yeah, thank you so much.
That's amazing. That's absolutely fantastic. We've actually, in the last 2 hours, we've earned about 20 subscribers, just to let you know, because we were at 1286 and now we're at 1,206. So again, as ever, if you are watching the stream and you're enjoying what we're doing and you haven't hit that subscribe button, it's just going to keep getting better. These stream, I'm telling you now, just to tell everybody right now that's watching this, I'll address that in a minute. Simply put, when did you stream, Jason? Friday, wasn't it? I've completely forgotten the last
Friday
thing. Yeah,
night,
Friday evening was phenomenal. I thought that it was a fantastic show, and these shows are just going to get better and better and better for you guys. I am really, really enjoying what we're bringing to the table with you people coming on air and just talking fantasy football. And I'm telling you now, it's just going to get better and better and better. By the way, just to let people know, Dereka, I accidentally said your name. I was supposed to say DC, Alex Summerson, Steve-O, breaking news. Yeah, the breaking news was that we've hit over 1,200 subs. That's it. There's no transfer news or anything like that. But no, in all seriousness, I've got a big vision for this, for what we're doing, and the more and more that we get supported, the more my vision becomes almost real. And I honestly, I'm telling you guys now, I just cannot wait for game week 1 through to about game week 3, where you guys are going to be my competition, and you're going to see a man that is not going to be like this, not going to be all happy or anything. I'm going to get really angry at certain people's transfer luck, captain luck, my bad luck, things that I've been telling you I should be doing, but I never go through with it. It's all going to be all recorded and stuff. Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fantastic, and I honestly cannot wait.
I mean, it's literally, it's been said in chat, it's been said by the callers, and it's basically hearing your views and your opinions. I mean, you can only hear so much from me and Steve-O. What really makes this channel what it is you guys coming on and giving us your opinions and the content. And at the moment, this is just guessing games at the moment. Let's not beat around the bush. This is just guessing games. We're playing guessing games. Come game week 1, we're going to get meltdowns, we're going to get rants, we're going to get jubilance, bragging sessions. We're going to get Steve-O turning red with steam coming out of his ears, and hopefully I'm going to be in the top 6 pages of the Elite FPL Community League. And if I'm not, they're going to be very, very red-faced. And there's going to be so many managers in our Elite FPL Community League that are just going to be flying high in the ranks, and just to break page 1, I think, is going to be an absolute achievement. It really, really, really is. I'm not over exaggerating. There's some seriously hardcore players in this community. There's some seriously good managers, and I'm kind of worried about the Cash League. I think the Cash League is going to be bringing it a whole new level, the whole new rivalries. Me and Steve won't be talking to each other by game week 38. We're gonna be like muting each other during the streams or something. But it's great. It's great, and we love it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's gone 8 o'clock, Jason. There's got to be breaking news now about who has won the poll vote for the final striker position.
It is gone 8 o'clock. You're right. Thank you for reminding me. So the winner of the poll.
Is it Josser or Wesley?
Neither.
What?
There's no winner at the moment. They're tied on 23.
So you're gonna have the old.
So I haven't voted yet. I'm not allowed to vote, am I?
Here you are. Yeah, of course you are. Yeah, you
vote.
get the deciding vote. This is live radio.
No, someone else has done it. Someone else has voted. Literally 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wesley. There you go. I've picked Wesley. Wesley is the pick. There we go. Too late now. You can't change it. Can't change it. I said to you guys at 8 o'clock. You've had 7 extra minutes to change the vote. I said at 8 o'clock it's going to be decided. They were on 23. I've picked Wesley. So Wesley will be the final pick in our community Discord. Sorry, in our community FPL team. What do you think about that, Steve-O?
Yeah, I think to be honest with you, the whole team is completely template. Just to, out of respect to Ruddy Pugsdenia is asking, what's the way into the cash league? Jason, take it away. You know all the details.
If you want to take part in the cash league, then there's a few things you need to fill out with us, and you need to be a part of our Discord community. It's all the information can be found on Discord, and that's all I'm going to say on the matter. But yeah, basically, just join us on Discord.
Excellent.
The teams are shaped up, by the way. So that is the community team right there on the screen. Come game week 1, that is your team, guys. That is your Elite FPL community team. Come game week 1 in the Broadcasters League that we're a part of. That was set up by who got the assist? Is that right?
No, it was Stephen Toomey he's one of the correspondents for at Planet FPL.
Planet FPL. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, by the way, I want to give a shout out to Alex. I've forgotten his last name. Alex, our thumbnail creator.
Summerson. Oh, Alex Volo.
Volo, I knew it was a V. Just want to say a massive thank you to Alex Volo for the thumbnail that he created for us this evening. Superb work as ever. If you want to give them a follow, I will put a link in the in the description or something. I don't know, whatever I'll do. But yeah,
we'll tweet him out again. We'll tweet him out tonight again.
I'll do it now. I'll do it now.
And let's read a few more of the messages in chat. Let me just bring it up on the screen because I know you guys are chatting away there. So you're asking for our Discord. Thank you, FPL Booner, for linking the Discord information on the screen. 1.5 subs. Ed will get his guitar out for us. I do not look like Ed Sheeran, Fast Air. Look, absolutely, I literally don't look nothing like him. Ryan over Pope? ? It's too late. It's already been decided. Zaki, I'm afraid, if you didn't vote, then it's unfortunate, but it's all decided. It's locked in. The team is locked in now. But what's going to happen, Steve-O, if there's a horrific injury? Are we just going to have to play the subs?
What do you mean?
Like I mean, like in training or something. So, say I don't know, Wilson or something gets ruled out game week 1. We're just gonna have to just suck it up and play Dendonka.
Yeah, no. What we would do is then we would probably do some kind of special broadcast where we would set up some kind of poll where you guys would vote on who to bring in. But we all know that ain't gonna happen at the end of the day. And just for anybody that is wanting to know, how do you decide on transfers and captaincy? We'll be doing that on our preview show. Yeah. On our preview show every Thursday, we will be basically putting up a poll: who's the best captaincy pick, and if you want to do a transfer or not. Basically, just follow us on Twitter at Elite FPL, and we'll be able to send out polls, and also in the Discord as well. More importantly, we'll give you all the information through that, and then we will just basically do everything through what you guys tell us to do.
Absolutely. Play a song. Is there going to be a live stream on Friday when the game is on?
Well, my assumption is yes, but if not, we're definitely taking calls after the game is finished. That is an absolute certainty.
We've got a super chat that's about to come through from Lee Aussie 2. He's donated $4.99 on super chat. I can't wait for the Cash League. Time to sprinkle some hot sauce into your FPL. I don't know if it's going to read it out because the minimum is £5 for the readout. So we'll wait and see if it's going to read it out.
Leozi2 donated £1 through super chat. Can't wait for the Cash League. Time to sprinkle some hot sauce into your FPL. Hashtag FPL hot sauce. Hashtag blame Boona.
Hashtag blame Boona. Hashtag right. So FPL hot sauce. Thank you ever so much for that. I know that you're very excited for being in the Cash League, like I am, like everyone is. The prize pool is going up. We're almost at a prize pool of £600. Almost at a prize pool of £600. There is a possibility we can get that up a bit more. I don't care now, to be honest with you. I'll be honest with you. I genuinely don't care how many more people join the Cash League because it's got to the size that I'm comfortable with. I don't know about you, Steve-O, but we've got 60, almost 60 people registered and paid into the Cash League. I think you don't need any more than that. What's your thoughts?
I mean, I'm not really fussed. At the end of the day, you're the guy that's running. I just want to say thank you, Lee Aussie, for that donation. Thank you so much. I'm not really fussed. I think that at the end of the day, this is the first serious amount of money that we're dealing with from a worldwide perspective. We really, really appreciate everybody that's participating. We are obviously going to be focusing a lot of our Elite FPL podcast on this Cash Mini League. There's going to be, like Lee Aussie said, it is going to be time to sprinkle some hot sauce into this particular league because I'm telling you now, I cannot wait for the arguments to start. I cannot wait for it all kicking off. People getting annoyed. It's not just going to be me and you getting annoyed with various things. It's going to be people obviously in the chat and everything.
Yeah. I just want to address a few things as well because I don't think I've made it clear. And it's a good time to make it clear. With the Cash League, all you guys that are involved in the Cash League, there's going to be absolutely no administration costs taken away from any of the prize pool money. All of the money that goes into prize pool will be given back out. Absolutely 100% of the money will be given back as prizes. Prizes being a monthly Manager of the Month award of probably £10 for each month for the manager that finishes at the top in the points. And there's going to be a top 4 prize that breakdown that me and Steve-O will confirm, I think Thursday evening when we turn off the entries to the actual Cash League.
Yeah. Just a quick one by Lee Aussie. It wouldn't let him round the money up to a £5. But he's complete. He just says, "You're welcome, boys. Best content creators out there, most passionate, and thank you for bringing this amazing community together." Hashtag Discord. Couldn't agree more. It's all down to Jason, really. That I'm just the host. Jason's the guy that creates everything. That's as simple as it gets, and he's the guy that you want to be thanking for, who's created this wonderful.
I'm the brains. He's the brawn, chat.
Yeah, so all you need to know. Let's got another caller, Jason. Let's bring on
him on.
FPL Hot Sauce. I know that he's been in the waiting room for a very, very long time. He posted his team at 1950. So FPL Hot Sauce, make sure that you unmute your mic and put your headphones on or whatever that symbol specifically means, because you are now live on Elite FPL Call in FPL Hot Sauce. Please speak to the nation. Oh, he's not there, Jason. What a shame.
Give him a second. He may respond. FPL Hot Sauce, can you hear me?
It's got a really good 4-3-3 formation as well.
Oh, well, hopefully he'll come on afterwards. Oh, no, I think he's there now.
Oh.
Hot Sauce, can you hear us?
I can hear you, mate, yeah.
There we go. First and foremost, thank you ever so much for that kind donation.
Mate, I weren't being tight. I tried making it a £5 and it kept jumping from $4.99. It's like $19.99. I couldn't get it to £5, but you're more than well.
I did think $4.99. Such an odd number to it, but no. Any 1p is appreciated. I'm afraid. We're not used to. Are we, Steve-O? To be fair,
no.
And you know, now you're part of the Cash League. You're excited about it. You can't wait for the season to start. But we're here with your team. You've gone with a 4-3-3, which has got a few picks in it, which I'm going to raise my eyebrows to. Which obviously you probably know the right and the right and left back of your team at the moment, Fredericks and Hollebass, and obviously a bench that's got no real substance. I mean, it's just so. Talk to me about your selection.
Mate, my head's in pieces after that Community Shield game. I'm telling you, like there look so many must-haves on that pitch. Like I was saying, I quickly went in the hangout, and Van Dijk just looks like an animal. I was going with Trent since all the 100 drafts I've done. Trent's been in there, but now after seeing Van Dijk nearly scoring or assisting from every corner, I just don't know what to do now. Sterling obviously scored, got his goal. Could have had a hat trick maybe, or Walker looked good. We now know Zinchenko's going to start. I just do not know what to do. So that's not obviously going to be the final team. I just quickly confirmed it so I could get the Rate My Team up in case you guys pulled me on air, to be honest. Might be a long night.
I think actually you saying that, I mean, that I look at this team and other than Fredericks, I mean, I would probably play Dendonka over Fredericks myself.
Oh yeah. That's not Steam.
But the chat. Oh, bear with me a second. I just need to quickly sort my. I've got a 30-minute timeout on my camera. So. But the chat basically are liking your Holobas pick, and they're also talking about your team being an interesting one. They're actually liking your team.
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah, obviously Fredericks I can swap that for a better 4.5 opening fixture and then maybe get him in. But the reason why it looks so different or weak with no substance, as you say, is because you notice Pereira's gone, because I just don't think Pereira's gonna start. I had a really nice balance with Pereira, but he's just had no pre-season minutes. That's the trouble with being a part of the Argentinian squad coming back late. So I just can't gamble on him not starting. I like the look of Wesley, but again, game week 1, so King and Wilson. Bit of a punt up top with a double up on Bournemouth. So yeah, there's some surgery needed, but it's interesting to see what you guys think.
We've got Stefan in chat says my AF point is on screen. I know, I've downloaded, I've actually I've installed the Green Lantern firmware for my Canon camera. There we go. I'm gonna zoom in. I need to sort it out. So this is new. This is new tech for the stream. So just give it a few days.
Having problems, Jason?
No, I'm not having problems. You can still see me, but unfortunately the AF, I can get rid of it. Don't worry. I just haven't got time to go and get rid of it now because it's behind. If you guys could see, it's behind everything, and I'm not going to go rooting through and sorting it out now. So you have to make do with the box, I'm afraid, guys, for the remainder of the podcast.
Hot sauce. And you were saying about your team. Hello, hot sauce. Are you there?
I'm there, Steve. Oh, sorry, mate. You broke up then. Did you ask me a question?
You were just making the point about your team. Until Jason came. It doesn't matter. The point being is that why are you going with a 4-3-3 formation, basically? That's what I'd like to know. I really like it.
I don't want this headache of who's going to take the penalty for Bournemouth. I don't want suddenly King to nick the goal. And I just think for those 2 fixtures, I can just relax a little bit. I think Fraser's an option as well. It all hinges on Kane. Like, Kane takes away so much of the budget. Can Moura cover him? Possibly. So there's a bit of decision making to come. I was quite impressed with De Bruyne. I could swap Sterling to De Bruyne and then upgrade anywhere again. But I don't know if I want to risk that either, to be honest, because Sterling looks so good and Sané's now injured, so Sterling's not going anywhere. He's starting.
I say this all the time. My issue with it's not my issue with De Bruyne. I've got him in my team. I don't want to let him go because he is just a world-class player. But the issue with De Bruyne is that he's just not a captaincy pick. I know you've got 3 captaincy picks within your team, but are you one of these people that's just planning to get rid of Kane after game week 1, or are you just sticking with Kane for the majority of the season, see how he gets on?
Well, the reason why Fredericks is there now is because I want him in for game week 2 onwards. But that's one dead transfer. I was planning the Aubameyang Kane, doing a bit of a hokey cokey, to be honest.
Oh, right, okay.
I've been sat on that for a long time now. So I don't want to be going into needing a -4 game week 1 because I need to swap out an Adam Smith who's got a good game week 1, and then so I don't know. But yeah, I was planning the hokey cokey, and Kane looks good. For his fixtures. Arsenal away, that could be goals. Palace are going to struggle. Could get a brace or a hat-trick against Palace at home. They went nuts against Leicester last season. I think it was 6-1. Son obviously outshone him that week, and then it's Southampton at home and Brighton and Watford. So for me, Kane, perhaps from the hokey cokey game week 2, is in for the first 9 games.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. It is the most basic question I can ask, but it's the most honest one, which is, what's the likelihood of this being your game week 1 team?
The way it's gone in the last few weeks, it'll 100% change. Like it's been changing daily. So
has there? You say you've been changing it every day and just swapping it. Has there been an actual team which you kind of keep going back to, or a specific formation?
Yeah, I mean, Wilson's not moved, neither's Salah and neither's Digne. So the only ones... my gut is saying Holobas, so I feel like I'm now going to have to go with that. And I think Perez is locked in. So the only ones that could change, Steve-O, would be King, Fredericks, and maybe a Kane. But if Kane goes, then I'd be putting Moura in to cover his points. So you're looking at maybe 3-4 players. But I mean, Jason rated my team on the last stream he did, and it looked a lot more balanced just with Pereira in. So there's only one player out there which stops it from maybe looking a bit sort of imbalanced. And I think 4-3-3 isn't your most common formation. So yeah, it's different. It's different, as you guys say.
Do you know what? Play Dendoncker over Fredericks, and you've got my endorsement. Play that game week 1. I think you'll be in for some good points. But captain and Kane, I mean, I may join you for it. Game week 1, and we could be top of the elite. We could be top of the Elite FPL table.
I agree, mate.
It could easily
differential captain on Kane.
Salah's not quite feeling up to it. Hasn't got his shooting boots on. He's missing shots left, right, and centre. He's preferring his left foot and hitting them wide. Bring in Kane. Get a hat-trick against Aston Villa. We'll be loving it. Absolutely, guys.
I tell you, looked a bit flat today. Who's going to miss Mane as well? Robertson looked a bit... I know, yes, he played City and, you've got to defend a lot more. But Robertson didn't look as though, he's going to be racking up those assists. I think he'll miss Mane down that side. So if Mane's not playing game week 1, Robertson doesn't worry me either, to be honest.
Well, interestingly, Leon FPL, I don't know where this source is from, or I don't even know if it was actually going to happen, but apparently the Dybala to Man United deal is broken down.
Apparently he doesn't want to go. Dybala doesn't want to go there.
No, it was down to him. We agreed in principle the deal with Juventus. It was all about the personal terms, and I don't think the player has reached. I've heard Mandzukic is an option, but he's a bit too slow for my liking.
I think
getting a bit past it.
Yeah, I just think we need a CDM. I think our position that we need is a CDM. We've got Maguire now. If we could get a world-class CDM in, I think we'll be all right with what we've got up front. With Lukaku, obviously I don't want Lukaku in, but the Dybala transfer just seemed too good to be true for me. I never took all that as gospel. I never really took much out of these rumor mills that were circulating, because there's so many points that you've got to factor in. Whenever you do a player trade, it complicates a transfer tenfold, and yeah, I'm not surprised that it hasn't actually happened, to be honest with you. But yeah, anything else you want to say, Hot Sauce, before we get another caller on the show?
No, guys, I'll switch in, relax, listen to the stream, and review my team again a bit later on. But
your
yeah,
team
is
literally, there's nothing wrong with your team whatsoever. I mean, there's people are saying yellow card Bass, referring to Holobas, but your team is nice. It's a good team, and you've got the big hitters in Kane, Sterling, and Salah. And you haven't done what I've done, and you haven't gone necessarily with Ceballos. But what you have done is you've got Fredericks, and then you've got Dendoncker on the bench. So I don't know. I prefer my punt on Ceballos myself. But then if you wanna change things up again, that's an option, isn't it?
Can I just ask quickly? Do you guys get sold on Van Dijk at all today? Did you not just think? Can you imagine not having him in your team and watching the clean sheets rolling and him going up for the set pieces? Because I think the bonus points could be switching to him.
Well, again, we shouldn't take too much away from what we see pre-season, but yeah, he did look really good today. Really, really good today. He is the best centre back in the Premier League. He is the best centre back in the Premier League. There's no doubt about it. And do you know what? I think he probably will be in my team come game week 1. Because as much as I sit here and go, yeah, I'm pretty set on my team, don't think I'm going to be changing too much. I think come Thursday, Friday, I'm going to be looking at my team thinking I haven't got Van Dijk in and I can save a bit of money. Will I have TAA and Van Dijk? Will I just go with Van Dijk and save that 0.5 and upgrade Walker Peters like I said earlier on? Or will Ake be an acquisition for Man City? Or we just don't know yet. And there's still those call-ins that we have yet to do and discuss. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Then.
Thank you.
I'll
thank you,
boys. I'll be listening in. So
yeah, thank you,
Jason. Can we get on FPL Boona as well as FPL Defender? Defender's in the Hangout, and his team is at 2007. Very, very different. Very, very interesting.
What time did Defender post it? Oh, I see it.
2007.
Hello there.
343.
Hello, Mr.
Hello, FPL Defender.
Hello.
For those of you listening into the podcast on one of our audio services, we've got Heaton in goal, Van Dijk, Coleman, Zinchenko, Sterling vice captain, Salah captain, Trossard, who I've seen a rise in selections lately, Perez. Now this is interesting. Have you recently changed this?
You have the wrong one.
Have I got
Yeah, sorry. I have it lower down with the hashtag team complete.
Okay, right. So Heaton in goal, Robertson, Zinchenko, Coleman, Sterling, Salah again with the captaincy on Salah, De Bruyne, Perez, Wesley, King, and Wilson. That is a great team. That's ticked all the boxes for me. That's a great team. That is a good team.
Yeah, I've been thinking about a lot of differential picks. I think Stevie knows about it.
I'm detecting an accent. Are you from Sweden or Norway?
Yes.
Sweden.
Yeah.
See, I'm out of the two of us. I can actually get accents right. So talk me through your team because I like it.
Yeah, so I have Heaton, Aston Villa. I think they have good fixtures. If I compare it to Pope or Brian, and then Robertson, I have been thinking about Trent or Robertson. This is more of a safe pick. We don't know rotation. We don't know, and then Zinchenko could be a question mark. Could be I might have to switch him if Mendy's back for maybe Wan-Bissaka or something.
Yeah, I don't think you need to worry that for at least the first 4 or 5 game weeks. But I don't think Mendy's going to be anywhere near match fit, or even in Pep's good books. It's something that may arise later on, but certainly nothing to worry about straight away.
Exactly. And then I'll also get time to see United in action and see if I'm putting in instead. And then I have Coleman. It's just like I don't have the money to Digne, so I think Coleman is a good pick there to cover the Everton fixtures. And then I have Sterling, of course. He is absolute must. Salah, De Bruyne is actually I've been having Sigurdsson there for a while. So after today's match, I had to switch around stuff in my team to get him in because
he was a lot higher up in the pitch than I was thinking he would.
So are you happy not having Sigurdsson in your team now?
Yeah, I'm happy having De Bruyne instead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, who wouldn't be? Let's be honest with you. I mean, again, De Bruyne today getting in the right positions. Just the final pass, a few of the final passes weren't on point, but you just know as soon as he starts to get those, that his aim, those balls are going to go straight through. Sterling, Aguero, Jesus, Bernardo Silva are going to be running through pinpoint passes. He's going to get assists. He's going to get goals. This season's going to be big for De Bruyne. I got a real good feeling about him, and the fact that he's not in my team is worrying me every single day.
Yeah. I think De Bruyne is like an upgrade to Siggy. The point will like tick in, but I think De Bruyne's like assist potential can like be explosive. Like if, let's say, they win against a team like 4-0 or 4-0, he can like assist everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I should take note of Scandinavian team managers because they are notoriously good at finishing high in the FPL game as a general. I mean, there was a stat I read last season. I can't remember it, unfortunately, but there was a high percentage of people from Sweden and Norway that were in that kind of top 50k in the game. So yeah, maybe you're on something. I mean, I like that team. I will write that down. Very good.
Yeah, actually, the one who came third last year was a Swede. So yeah.
Wow.
There we go.
Wow.
And then we have here Pires. It's like a Leicester cover. I think if he's gonna play beside him, I think it's good value there. And then we have West, but he has good fixtures, and penalty taker. And it could be switched later to any other 6.0, but I think the other one is more wait and see. And then King and Wilson is a must to have King and Wilson or Wilson and Frasers.
That's a very strong team you've got there. A very strong team, and Bruno agrees with me. And that is a very strong candidate for Gameweek 1.
It's the perfect 3-4-3.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah, and I've been talking a lot with Davey P, who's a regular here, and he's he's much for structure and stuff. So I've been like learning stuff from him.
Yeah,
very strong.
That's good. And in fact, you've just touched upon. I know we're late into the stream and everything, but that's really nice to hear. Defender, I know you're a regular on my morning streams and everything. Do you want to just tell the audience now about what the benefits are of Discord? I mean, you just mentioned the fact that you're speaking to one of the regulars, Davey P, about some advice about how to structure a team. I mean, yeah, can you just tell the viewers your thoughts on this Discord community that we're building?
Yeah. I mean. All the other YouTube channels, they have like 6 minutes. You get only their views, and then you have Twitter, of course. But here you can discuss in waiting rooms. You can. I mean, this is the first season I play, and I already feels like I have played a season, but that's only because I've got so much information. Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah. Sorry, Steve. You go ahead then.
No, I was just going to ask Defender, what if there's one piece of information that you've been given which you thought, do you know what, I've taken that on board, I am going to stick with that. Is there anything off the top of your head that you can think of?
Say that again.
I was just saying that, is there any information that you've been given because of the Discord community which you thought, yeah, I'm sticking with that, thank you so much?
Yeah, it's about it's a lot of things. So I can't picture on anything, but I mean I have looked like myself. Like I want to have like differential thing. You want to experience. You do a new draft every day, but you get headaches and stuff. But then you learn. Like take it easy, and I think the best tips was to, and that was Davey P also.
Yeah, Davey P's in chat as well.
Yeah, and
he's saying that you got a very similar thought process to him, and like people like Davey P, like Boona, like Llama, like everyone that's in chat now, everyone that's in the Discord. That I'm not saying it. I don't want to be all cliche, but without you guys, we would be nothing. Without you guys bring all the content, the additional content here to engage in conversation, to bring new and kind of inspire new conversations, and that's basically just the Discord epitome of Discord. Is that you guys? I've seen you guys. You've been sat there in the Hangouts talking about FPL when we're not on air, and doing a mini live stream just to yourselves because you've been just discussing it. And I'm excited to see the Discord grow to a point where we're seeing that happen almost all day long and in various time zones as well. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Any more thoughts, Defender, before we let you go?
Yeah, I just gonna say the best advice I got, and that was to think long term, not to have like so many different thoughts on. You're gonna switch that to that. You're gonna have Kane switch Aubameyang and there, and then you have to wild card there and there. Instead, have quality players that have done it before, and you can save your wild card to December when so many teams is going to have good fixtures, and you don't have them because it's the wrong teams, but you can wild card there. So yeah, that's the best advice.
So apparently, well, thank you ever so much for that. Thank you ever so much for sharing that. But apparently, I just want to give you an update. Chat screaming that Arsenal have conceded an own goal, Maitland-Niles' own goal, and apparently Leno is pissed. we all know that the Arsenal defence are full of holes, and yeah, Arsenal up front could be great for FPL, but at the back, I know that a few people have had Leno in. We had a caller earlier on with Leno in. I just wouldn't be holding out any hope. I'd rather have Heaton, I'd rather have Pope, I'd rather have Ryan in my team. I just think that even with the saves, I think there's more potential getting saves out of those keepers. But yeah, thank you ever so much, Defender, for being here, for being a part of the community. You're new to FPL, you're new to the community, and you've got the courage to come on air and talk to us about your team, and it's a good team. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers now.
Cheers, Defender.
Cheers.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I think bring on FPL Boona if he wants to chat with us for a few minutes.
FPL Boona, are you there? You want to talk to us?
No, it doesn't.
No, it
Keeps going in and out.
Okay.
We've got someone that's been in the Discord waiting room for quite a while. Sgem84. They've been there waiting and waiting. If you unmute your mic and your headphones and anything else you want to unmute, make sure you're not listening back to the stream when you're live on air, because you're live on air right now. Sgem84.
Sgem84. If you're listening to the stream, here we go. Here he is. You're live on the FPL Call in. Sedge, how you doing? How you doing?
And Stefan as well from the chat.
Stefan, the guy that's giving me advice on the camera.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's giving me advice on the camera. Are you a photographer, Stefan?
I do like to dabble, chaps. Yes, I do.
Very, very good. It's the first time it's my first time actually hooking up a HDMI cable to a DSLR, and I'm not one for photography, so it's a learning process. But I relish in learning things, and it's an amazing learning curve. So welcome to the call-in, Stefan. It's a very clear line. First and foremost, I'm detecting a very British accent there.
That would be correct. Yes, I mean we can play guess the accent. But,
you've got a very Fast Air in chat says this guy has a very professional voice. So yeah, you're already kind of luring the chat into thinking that you're a radio. Have you got a job in radio?
No, wishful thinking, but we'll get there soon.
Maybe. Very, very, very good. So, have you posted your team in the Rate My Team?
1951, Jason.
Yes.
1951. All right, bear with me a minute. Well, you talk to Steve-O while I bring it up.
Well, my instant reaction is you've got a 5-man midfield. Oh, no, you're going with a 4-4-2 with Glenn Murray.
4-4-2, yes. Indeed, with the Glenn Murray.
Why Glenn Murray?
Get into it, shall we? So, Glenn, I think is underestimated. He might be in his 30s, but he is dogged.
Okay.
You compare him. So I've been swapping him around with Wesley. The only reason it's not Wesley week 1 is Tottenham. And putting an untested, new to the Premier League guy who's obviously very, very good in Brugge. I think it was Brugge, was it? And his obviously stats are way up there in terms of goals and assists. I think between him and Trossard, there's 2 prime differentials. It's just they're not proven yet. So I'm not taking a risk.
That's very interesting. I've always kind of gone on. Well, I say always gone on safe bets. I mean, are you not concerned that Murray isn't going to be getting the minutes that other players at that price point are going to be getting, or are you convinced that Murray's going to start off with a good run of fixtures?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not too concerned. I mean, in terms of who he's competing with at the front, I don't think he's got huge amounts of competition. And last year he did play in every single game, even if he didn't start. So he's got form in terms of being on the pitch. And if you look at Trossard and the fact that he might become something of a playmaker, particularly given the number of assists that he got last year in the Belgian league, I can only see that as some sort of enabler to Murray and potentially upping his goals from 13 or whatever it was last year.
Yeah, I can see what your thoughts behind it are. I mean, it's different, and it's going to be a differential for you, definitely. I mean, the team. Let's concentrate on your team as a whole, really. I mean, the team as a whole. I'm concentrating on Murray. I shouldn't be, because your team is very good. It's a very strong attacking team.
It's template. It's a template community team.
It is a template community team. I have a question for you, Stefan. Are you considering possibly downgrading Robertson, or are you happy to keep that second Liverpool defender at 7 million? Because that would be an option, obviously, to upgrade Murray if you needed to. You could spread the funds out there.
So this is a team that has been through many iterations, even today, let alone the last week. But Robertson used to be TAA until about 2 hours ago. Well, I've just had a bit of nervousness around, actually, is he going to get starting time, and trying to firm up and take out some of the thought. Because I think it's the one thing that will kill people.
If I said, like, if Ake moved to City or Everton or something, or just even if he stayed at Bournemouth, would you consider downgrading Robertson to Ake and upgrading Murray to Wilson? But then, I mean, I know you got Fraser. Would you go with the triple up, or do you think that's too much?
I don't think going for a Bournemouth defence is necessarily sensible. I'm still a little bit worried that Bournemouth might have had a very good season last year and be unable to repeat it.
You think
at that point,
overperformed last season? Yeah,
quite possibly. Yeah, so potentially a slightly overweight team last year. So we'll see how they actually come in this year.
No Wan-Bissaka in that team. Are you not convinced that he's going to emulate his season of last season, getting all those bonus points?
So I had him last year. I thought he was great last year, but he was in a defence that knew how to play with each other. So now you've got Maguire just coming in, so he's got to learn how to play with him. He's got to learn how to play with the other guys. They've never looked particularly well formed, and gambling again on someone who's $1 million more than they were last year, where they've got to relearn how to play as a team, feels a bit dangerous. But the option's there. I've got the option of swapping Zinchenko or Coleman out if I needed to make some changes there. But the fixtures just look so favourable for the first 10 weeks across City and Everton and Bournemouth, which is sort of hence why waiting so much towards those teams.
Well, FPL Booner is actually echoing your stance on Murray. He's saying it's definitely first choice. I really like the Murray pick. It's obviously how many minutes he can play, and how prone to injury he is the more minutes he does play. Obviously into his 30s now. I don't know. I like what you've done. I like what you've done here, and the thought process has gone into it. I do. And And Bruno says that he'd be keen to go Murray and Trossard in his team. And Archie in chat, Archie Mac is in chat saying, I would recommend you swap Murray to Andre Gray. I don't think it's going to, that's a potential option for you for that price point.
Go get the minutes. He's been subbed on too much.
Yeah, it is. At that price point, it's hard to find a player that's going to be playing 90 minutes and getting decent returns. I think 6 million for Murray. It's enough to kind of have a bit of a punt on. I still say he's a punt. I know he's a proven Premier League player. I do agree with you. He's proven he scores goals. He's a massive goal threat, and obviously with Trossard in that team, there's definitely goals in there. And it could pay off as being a massive. I hate to say the word, but a player that other people don't have, that you could easily reap rewards from. So definitely, I can definitely see that. I'd just be interested to see if you stick by your decision with Murray come game week 1, or whether you decide to change it out, and who you do swap to him. I think ultimately your team is pretty set, isn't it? I don't think you've got that many headaches.
To an extent, yeah. I mean, the biggest changes today has been putting De Bruyne back in. Up until, again, a few hours ago, Coleman was being...
It's so tempting at
Zinchenko,
9.5, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, my only concern at the moment is... I'd made the change back to Zinchenko because Laporte not featuring earlier, and just no news doesn't necessarily mean good news in this instance with Laporte. So I don't want to end up with Laporte in there at burning 6.5 million week 1 if he might not feature.
I think Zinchenko is a really good pick anyway, just for the price point, and obviously the entry into the City defence. I think a lot of people are going to go with him. It's interesting, obviously gone with the triplet of Liverpool. It's like it is the template. Basically, we got the Robertson and Van Dijk double up. I think a lot of people are going to probably stick with the double up Liverpool. I don't read into much about the results in pre-season, but it does give you food for thought though. With the performances of Trent and obviously Robertson seemed to be a bit off the boil as well today. But yeah, I think you'll be set going forward into game week 1 with that team. I want to see how you do with Murray if you keep him in. I would be loving to have you back on the show.
The other point with Murray, and this is perhaps making I'm still hurting from the World Cup, so I still feel the pain of Sterling in the World Cup and just not bringing the performance. I'm always a bit worried when it comes to Sterling, despite these fantastic seasons in the Premier League. There's always that possibility that he just doesn't turn up again.
Wow, there is that possibility, and obviously we were talking about Aguero earlier on. Obviously Sterling, Aguero, there's no comparison. It seems a lot of people are going with Sterling. Has Aguero featured in your thought process at all in the past week or so?
Aguero, there's always a soft spot, I think, in most people's heart for Aguero, aren't they? Because you always think of the hat-tricks coming through, and you think of the triple captain weeks, and you think that the dream coming out, but it's the probability. So the numbers just don't back it. But that's the flexibility of someone like a Murray with a Sterling. If Sterling doesn't perform or something like that, you can swap someone like a Murray with a Sterling, and you can end up with a McGinn. I would say a Grealish, but my personal view, again, McGinn is a bit more dogged. I think he's doing a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, chat are talking about your team, and Ruddy's Pog says Zinchenko can easily be switched out to a Chelsea defender game week 2 or Spurs game week 3 if needs be. It's harder to move for 4.0. Absolutely, I agree with you. I mean, you've got players at the price points where you can move and swap as well. You're not limiting yourself. And so? Are you kind of just ignoring Kane, or have you considered Kane at all, or Aubameyang, or are you just not convinced that they're gonna? They're too high a price for you to have them in, as well as the likes of obviously Sterling and De Bruyne.
I think fundamentally it just comes down to that. If you see how the numbers stack. There's always the emotional attachment to having these star strikers, but you look at the numbers, it tells you it's the back line and it's the midfield where the points are coming from.
No, absolutely.
So many out of position players sitting in the midfield that are actually playing up front, so you're getting those bonus points for your goals. That's the way I look at it. So as much as I'd love to have a Kane or an Aguero or an Aubameyang, I just think unless the midfield players start falling off,
I mean,
There's no rationale.
Shane McGuinness in chat says, quite rightly so, Aguero's not played a single minute in pre-season, absolutely, but doesn't mean he's going to be left out. I think he's going to be vying for position with Jesus, and I think he's the preferred striker. But you're absolutely right. Why risk it on a player and when you've got Sterling in that team that's performing really well? No, like I said, really happy with that team. I mean, it's good. I just whereas for me, my risk is Ceballos. I will say that you've got that uncertainty with Murray, but it's not that you don't know what to expect from him. It's just how many minutes he's going to play, and if he's going to get goals in the minutes that he is playing on the field. Steve?
Indeed, yeah. And the point with Aguero, I think, as well, is I think people just forget that he didn't really play at the beginning of last season either. I think he was subbed on game 1.
He was phased in. He was phased in, wasn't he? Yeah. Last few game weeks. Yeah, I completely agree. And the only reason I bring up Aguero is because absolutely nobody's talking about him, and I just wanted to know if there's any real reason for that. Obviously, we know he hasn't played much, at all. Sorry, in pre-season, and somebody says he broke his leg in training. Yeah, that's not true. I don't know about that. But
one question for you guys though. So I noticed Button keeps appearing. Are you guys not concerned about a mass sell-off with 25% ownership and potentially tanking his value?
Am I concerned about that? Not really. No. Steve-O, are you concerned about Button?
I think everybody's brought him in for a specific reason, because he is that goalkeeper that's going to stay on the bench, and people are just it is that case of set and forget. He's not going to be sold by. I don't think the people that have bought him in have gone, oh, do you know what? Button's a bit of a decent choice there. That's why I'm bringing him in. He's been brought in because he's just going to be bench fodder. That's it.
Yeah, he's just a waste. It's like just forget about him, and move on really. But yeah, I'm happy for you. I'm glad you came on to the show and discussed your team with us. It's a very strong team. It is a very, very strong team, and it'd be interesting to see if you are available later on in the week to come on, and maybe even on Friday coming on and tell us about your final decision whether to keep Murray or not. I'll actually make a note of it.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Thank you ever so much for coming
Brilliant.
on, Stefan. I appreciate it. Wow, Glenn Murray pick with Stefan there.
I think we got one more final caller, Jason. It's a regular viewer, Stein, and I think he has finally listened to a lot of conversation, chat, being part of the Discord community, because his team that was sent in at 2039 is looking pretty. I'm going to call it the Elite FPL community template team. That's what I think, and I'd like to hear Stein's thoughts on that opinion.
Okay, let's bring him in then. I see Boone is in chat as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here, mate.
You alright, mate? How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, right. Good, thank you.
So we've got Stein's team here. Stein's here. Stein, you're live on the FPL call-in. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the show. We've got your team up on the screen at the moment. For those listening in to the podcast, it's Ryan in goal with Alexander Arnold, Walker Peters, and Coleman in defence, with Salah, Perez, Fraser, De Bruyne, and Ceballos in midfield, with Kane and Vardy up front. A Vardy pick straight up from the off. A player, of course, I chose in my first ever draft, and has kind of ever since been kind of lingering in the darkness. So talk us through it, if you're there, Stein. Are you there, Stein? He's got yourself muted. You got yourself muted at the moment. Hopefully you'll unmute your mic. But Steve, what's your initial thoughts on that team?
Like I said, it's very, very Elite FPL community template focus. Everybody's, blame it on Boomer or whatever the hashtag. Blame Boomer with the Walker Peters. But no, Walker Peters is a guaranteed starter for at least, I would say, the first game at least, maybe 2 games. Ceballos, we've already spoke about him, although Stein is a big fan. In fact, he was the one that persuaded me to get in this Ceballos. And barring that, I can understand why he hasn't gone with Sterling, because we've gone with there are two premiums, but I also class Jamie Vardy kind of in that high echelons, along with Kevin De Bruyne, where they're usually going to be bringing in returns every other game week. So, Stein, do you agree with my thought process that your team is very Elite FPL community template team based?
It is indeed, and what I realised about that community team based template is that it's very fixture focused. And I didn't go fixture focused with my first, well, when I say first, my second draft. So somewhere in the two, I realised I need to be more fixture focused. Hence the reason why there's two top players in my Bournemouth play. So Martial had to leave. And getting Sibelius, it just freed up so much fun. So, yeah, once that was done, I thought, well, hang on a minute. I can get like Walker Peters in. I can keep Alexander Arnold. And all I had to do was just shift a few funds off my bench. So I've got 2 4 million players. Well, 3 4 million. Yeah. I've got a straight switch from him to Zuma because after Chelsea's first fixtures, first fixture against Man United, I think they've got a decent run. So depending on how Tottenham do on the first day, I'm certainly going to take him out against Man City. But if Tottenham perform well, I may leave him in. So I don't know. Rico's got a decent fixture, so if he plays, I'll put him in. Now I'll just hang tight, hold my substitution. So when I do switch Walker Peters, hopefully it'll just be one substitution and my 2 3.
I put out a poll on Twitter earlier on about whether this Community Shield game today will influence your decisions when it comes to your final team selection. If you didn't catch any of the game, you just saw the highlights, and obviously you know what the score was. Has it changed any thought processes regarding your team? I mean, I see Alexander Arnold there. People are now going into panic mode that he's never going to play for Liverpool again. Has today's game kind of almost backed up your decisions in a way of what you've gone with, or are you now thinking, oh, Trent Alexander-Arnold, I'm not really happy with now. Salah, maybe not. Apparently he was looking good today, to be fair, but still didn't get on that score sheet. So yeah, what are your thoughts on today's game and the selection process?
To be honest, Steve, I missed the vote and the stream for the team picks, and I've also missed the games. I was out with the family today, so I didn't get a chance. All I got was the results of the Formula One, because where I was, not one person was into football. Real bad, I know. But hey, I was with the family, so it wasn't too bad. So I didn't really get any results. This team I picked yesterday evening, but because I didn't expect to be out, I expected to be home by 6:30, obviously, but I wasn't. So this is the team I picked from last night. So it may need more tinkering after you tell me something. I don't know.
No, I completely agree.
I don't think it needs too much of a tinker, to be honest. I like that team.
Yeah, so do I. I think it's a really nice team. It's just for me personally, it's just the Walker Peters pick. But again, I understand why you've gone for it. The biggest question here, Stein, is what's the likelihood of this being your game week 1 team? There's only a few days to go.
There's actually 4 days, 22 hours and 35 seconds.
Thanks for that, Jason. But to be honest, unless I hear of injuries or last-minute signings, I'm not really going to tinker with it, because, like I say, it's only been yesterday I've tinkered with it, and I had it. It was what was happening in chat and me listening and realizing, my team is not that fixture focused. It's It was long-term focused, but not fixture focused for the opening fixtures. So that's the change that I've gone with.
I'm just going to write this down. Stein said on the 4th of the 8th, not going to tinker with my team.
Right. So there you go.
Right.
Yes. Hey, what can I tell you? It's very hard, Jason, as you know. So, you do your best. But again, it was the signing of Harry Maguire. to Manchester United makes me think, I may need to move Sibelius into, move that 5.5 million into Man United's defence at some point, and take the 5 million into midfield, So I don't know.
We'll talk about scores. Sorry, we're just going to just apparently Luis Suarez has scored for Barcelona, making it 2-1 Barcelona at the moment. Barcelona 2, Arsenal 1. That's according to chat anyway. But no, I mean those plans. I mean, again, I've been banging on about Wan-Bissaka being the best thing since sliced bread. It may end up being a massive backfire, and I'm going to be saying sorry to lots of people. But no, I think at the moment. With that 3-5-2 formation, you've got a lot of money invested in your midfield and your attack, and it could easy start you off well with the game week 1, and you don't have to worry too much. I don't think about Walker Peters straight away. Boona's in chat. I think nothing's changed on Walker Peters, is it, Boona?
Apparently he was shocking today. I had a few mates go to the Spurs versus Inter Milan game today, and they were like, we need Aurier back ASAP. So
no, so Walker
I've
Peters
taken him out.
Okay.
I've taken him out.
Okay, maybe Wan-Bissaka then instead of Walker Peters.
Maybe, but you know what? I'm gonna stick with Walker Peters just for the simple reason I have a sneaky feeling Rico will play, even if he comes off the. I think Rico will start. I don't know why, but it's a gut feeling. I had him in to start with before. He's back on my bench. So if fate puts him back in my team, then so be.
Fair. That's fair. That's a fair point. I mean, you've got that backup on the bench. It'd be interesting to see if Greenwood gets minutes, though, wouldn't it? For Man United, obviously, he wasn't in the starting team on Saturday against Milan. So Solskjaer said that the starting team against AC Milan would also almost be the same 11 that he puts out against Chelsea. So will he be that impact sub off the bench, and will he be able to nab some points for those people that, like yourself? I mean, obviously with the Walker Peters not playing, if he doesn't, you will be bringing in Rico anyway. But I think a lot of people are getting Greenwooded just for the budget, just purely for the budget and nothing else really. They don't really think that he's gonna score many goals, unless you're a United fan, of course.
I am a United fan, Jason.
I was talking to the wider community, but that's fair enough. I mean, anything you want to add, Steve-O? We get approaching the 2 hour 40 minutes.
No. It's the usual thing, isn't it? You've pretty much now settled on the team. So the odd player here or there that you're going to be changing, and come game week 1, it's probably going to be ending up looking the same anyway. So I just think Stein, just as we always say, just sit back, relax, and just enjoy the information that keeps rolling in your way, my friend.
Well, it's been useful. I don't believe there's anyone who's been in Discord who doesn't believe for 1 second that the information they've had has helped them tremendously this season. Because I'm convinced this is the strongest starting lineup I've ever started the game with, ever.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And it's a pleasure to have you on, Stein, and continue hopefully to have you on. And I've written that down. I'm not going to be tinkering my team this week. Look forward to speaking to you again closer to game week 1. Again, Stein. Cheers. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
I think Jason, maybe bring on Dan and NFC Mert for the last 2 calls of the evening.
So bring on Dan. Dan, you're live on the FPL Talk call in. Welcome to the show. We're 2 hours and 40 minutes in, and we couldn't feel any fresher. Have you posted your team in the channel lately?
1958. But before we start, Dan, your thoughts on the game tonight between Arsenal and Barcelona?
Yeah, I was just saying to the guys in Discord, they were like trying to console me after I was quite disappointed that Suarez scored a late winner, got in between Mustafi and Callum Chambers, and just had an easy goal. But yeah, I mean, Ceballos, I thought he looked quite good when he come on second half. Really nice finish from Aubameyang. Thought Joe Willock played well as well, but second half, Barcelona they bought Suarez, and obviously they come quite strong. At least Messi didn't come on and score 4 like he did in 2011. So, but no, interesting pre-season game, but it's still early. But yeah, I don't know what people in the chat were saying about Maitland-Niles, but that own goal was just.
I was going to ask you about
like
that own goal. What was the own goal like? What happened?
Well, there was just like no pressure. Chambers was trying to tell Maitland-Niles to calm down, and he just passed it into the goal, basically, sort of 6s and 7s with Leno. It was like the Trippier one for in the Tottenham-Chelsea game, similar to that, really. So I don't know what that's going to do for his confidence ahead of the actual start of the season, but it was just, I mean, but yeah, nice goal from Aubameyang.
I'm gonna have to watch Arsenal Fan TV after this. I'm gonna have to hear this. I got it.
I actually.
Can I actually ask you, Dan? What sort of position was Ceballos finding himself in this evening? Was he playing more of an attacking midfielder role, or was he deeper than we thought?
No, I wouldn't. It's funny because one of the other guys was asking me about that in Discord. He was actually getting into more attacking positions. Did a nice couple of bits of skill. Obviously, he's on loan from Real Madrid. I think one of the Barcelona players seemed to have it in for him, and he got taken out at one point. Quite bad for a pre-season game. But he did a lovely bit of skill. And then Saka was on the wing, crossed it in. Aubameyang just missed out. So he was taking up quite a few more attacking positions, but. Yeah, it's a wait and watch on that one. Obviously, 5.5 million, but he did pretty well. And now Arsenal are just I don't know if there's like a runners-up medal for this game.
Can I ask you, Dan, with Ceballos, you say he's a wait and see, which I agree with, but do you think for 1 million more than Den Donker, he's worth having as that extra midfielder as a 5-man midfielder? Do you think nope? Wait and see, spend that 1 million somewhere else to upgrade and just have Den Donker in the team instead as an example of a 4.5 midfielder?
I mean, in most of my drafts, I've had Den Donker, and I think with just trying to fit in so many different players, I think I would stay with Den Donker for now, because our fixtures, we've obviously got, Liverpool at some point, Newcastle away is not going to be easy. So yeah, I think Den Donker, it's wise to stay with him just to get in some more kind of premium assets across the rest of your team. Really, that's what I've done so far anyway, as you can see in my new draft.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got it up, it's Matt Ryan in goal, Alexander-Arnold, Digne, Walker-Peters, Salah, Doucouré, Barkley, Sterling, Kane, King, Murray. We were just talking about Murray earlier on. I know you're a big fan of his, and but more importantly, Doucouré and Barkley. Interesting differentials there from the standard template team. Do you want to just tell the audience why you're going with them two?
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to think of a team to get Kane, Salah, Sterling, and TAA in. Because of that, obviously my funds were kind of limited in the midfield. I had Doucouré in my previous draft. So when I spoke to Jay on Friday evening, I said about Doucouré as a player that I've admired for some time, and he started the season really well. When Watford had that kind of purple patch for the first couple of months. Bit of a mixture of different fixtures, but he did quite well last season. Pereira's one as well that I consider, but he's quite, I don't know what you guys think, but he's quite inconsistent at times. He could be quite frustrating, quite blank for say like 4 or 5 game weeks and then get like a double-digit haul at one point. But yeah, Doucouré, the one I'm in, well, I'd be interested to hear what you guys and people in chat have to say about it is Barkley, because he's been getting some quite good sort of pre-season games, getting some quite rave reviews in pre-season.
Yeah, one of our regular callers, Dereco, he's a massive fan of Barkley and thinks that because of his Premier League experience, basically. And Jason always keeps saying about the fact that will Barkley be the player that he was at Everton, the reasoning as to why Chelsea got him. And that's what Dereco basically thinks. He thinks he's going to be the main man. And the fact that he looks like he's going to be on penalties as well, I think for 6 million, I think, do you know what?
For 0.5 more. For 0.5 more. For
over Ceballos.
Ceballos, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think, you know what, trying to find that, you know what, I could downgrade now. Thinking
I can downgrade. I can downgrade TAA to Van Dijk.
Don't see everybody. He's doing it.
And
he's copying me.
Copying you already.
Yeah, I've just thought that as well. That's actually a really good shout.
It is a really
yeah. All right, Steve, you just build your title-winning team whilst I try and get some more. I mean, what about Walker Peters? Because I mean, I'm sure Boona will be able to shed more light on it. But
yeah, I mean, we spoke to death about Walker Peters. The simple answer is it looks like he's nailed for the first game. He's a good, solid pick, but as Boone has just mentioned just now, didn't look that great against Inter Milan today. Saying that they need some of his friends that went to the match saying that they need Aurier back ASAP, basically. But again, it's Aston Villa at the end of the day. But if he's playing against Man City, could whoever plays down the side of Walker Peters, could they be having some fun versus him instead?
Yeah, Ori is more experienced, isn't he? Really. So
I see you going with the rotating pair of Heaton and Ryan. It's a very it's a different strategy to what most people are doing. How come you're going with the rotating pair?
I've just got you know me with my goalkeepers. I always go for my cheap ones. I think Brighton have got some decent fixtures at the start of the season, so that's why I've got Ryan in. I have to admit, I had Heaton in when he was still at Burnley, and then obviously now he's gone to Villa. So, yeah, not too sure about that, to be honest with you. So Heaton's one I probably want to change, actually, but I'm trying to find another goalkeeper at 4.5 that I can fit into my team. So, but yeah, I'm happy with Ryan for now, to be fair. With those decent fixtures at the start of the season. But yeah, I mean, I was hoping for Heaton to be at Burnley, but he's obviously gone to Villa.
You've got Pope.
Yeah, Pope could be one to try to get in as well, actually. So yeah,
awesome.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I just like the Barkley. I mean, it is a wait and see on Barkley. Like it really is. But I keep thinking. We know Barkley's been in the Premier League now for quite some years, and I'm taking a punt on Ceballos, and I'm actually looking at your Barkley thinking exactly what Steve-O's thinking. And
I've just done it.
Yeah, it's why take the risk when Barkley's on penalties, like you said, he's playing quite attacking. He's had a great pre-season, and Ceballos is playing reduced minutes for Arsenal. He's not even guaranteed that he's going to start game week 1 for Arsenal, whereas I think Barkley will. I think Barkley will be a starter for Chelsea game week 1, and it's all about eliminating those risks, isn't it? That's what it's all about, and where possible. But we did talk earlier on with Stefan about Murray. You've also gone with Murray. A few people in chat are also saying that they like the Murray pick. Are you going to hold true to that? Are you going to hold true to the Murray pick come game week 1? Or is he going to be in your team?
Finally, Glenn Murray is getting the respect that he deserves. Finally.
Yeah, he's a good striker, isn't he? It's just that whether or not he's going to be able to last the game time.
Yeah.
He's not getting any younger, is he?
No, he's not, Joe. I mean, he's obviously like 35 now, and there were a couple of times last season where he's rotated. So, but he still had a decent points haul by the end of the season for his price bracket. And as I say, Brighton have got some decent home fixtures. I know they've got a new manager as well who's not proven in the Premier League, but it's a more like attack-minded manager as well. So I guess I'm just hoping they play to his strengths, really, and get the ball in. I mean, when I look at it, it's always my favourite formation is 3-4-3, and that's what I've always kind of stuck to. So I'm kind of glad that I've got 3 strikers that touch woods and nailed on. But yeah, I think Murray's a decent differential sort of.
I mean, you've earned a fan in Stefan. But I mean, but Nasty Balls is being pretty harsh on Glenn Murray, saying that my gran has a greater chance of converting a letter through a post box than Glenn Murray. I mean, I mean, he scores goals. Glenn Murray scores goals. There's no denying it. I mean, if you didn't watch Brighton last season, then you obviously wouldn't know. But he is a goal scorer. It's just purely that. It's the same argument with Aguero. Will he get the minutes that you need for a player? Obviously, it's a lot different price point. It's a completely different price point. So it's probably not a great comparison. But it's the same principle. You don't want to be having players that are going to be rotation risks or not getting the minutes. And I think that Murray is to me is a bit of a risk. That's I'm always going to say that. And I think that it's one of those where you can take a risk on it. You've got players in your team which are pretty nailed. Why not take a bit of a punt on Murray?
That's it. I'm just watching the replay of the Tottenham game. I've just seen Lucas Moura's goal. There's another guy people kind of seem to be forgetting about a bit. There's another option.
Well, it's all about the Kane train at the moment, isn't it? I mean, if you're thinking about, you've got Kane in your team. We've not mentioned that, but the armbands on Salah, is it going to stay on Salah?
Obviously, man, it's got to stay on Salah. I mean, I know he's still getting back to full match fitness. I didn't watch the Community Shield earlier, but I did see a few little clips of highlights, and I did see, a couple of bits of movement he was doing, and still obviously going to be very dangerous. At home to Norwich, you have to be pretty brave to kind of go for another captain in that first game week. But the only thing I'm worried about is it's let's just say Salah blanks. You're going to spend the whole weekend being oh, my captain's blanked on a Friday evening. I hate that feeling.
Yeah, it's a great point that Steve made. I mean, it's just a psychological that breaks you, doesn't it? Knowing that you've literally got to wait for the rest of the weekend and hoping that Kane or Aubameyang or Glenn Murray in your case doesn't score big. Salah's just sitting there with his 4 points or 6 points. Yeah, it's. Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, it's gonna be one of those where your armband's gonna be on him just for safety reasons. Yeah. But I did say that if my armband's on Kane, I did say that if we got to 1500, that I would keep the armband on Kane, and we're over 1200 now. So if we can get there, then I'll promise you I'll do that. It'll make the game week interesting.
Still a good move.
It's still a good move.
Yeah, it's still a good move. I know one of the guys in chat was saying Kane's had an iffy pre-season, but I mean, this is coming from an Arsenal fan. From the goals I've seen him score against Juventus, and particularly the nice little finish against Real Madrid. I don't know, unless I'm missing something. Maybe he was a bit quiet today or whatever. But like Steve-O says, it's Aston Villa. No disrespect, I've got a lot of love for the Villa, but it's going to be a very tough game for them. So.
Is Kane going to be switching to Aubameyang game week 2?
Yeah, probably, but still.
I'm just worried. I'm just wondering whether or not just to start with Aubameyang, start the season with Aubameyang. He's in great scoring form. He's obviously now there's Pepe in that midfield. He scored again tonight against Barcelona. Is that something which you've crossed your mind? Maybe just to go straight away with Aubameyang.
Yeah, I mean,
Newcastle
obviously
a good fixture.
Yeah, it's a good fixture. I mean, you got some other tough fixtures for the first sort of 4 to 6 game weeks, but Lacazette's had a bit of an injury concern after the game against Lyon last Sunday, so it would look that Aubameyang's going to be the central striker, and then obviously on the wing you'd have Pepe and possibly Reece Nelson or Willock or somebody else. But yeah, it's a good. I mean, at the end of the day, Jay, it's like you say, he was bloody joint top goal scorer in the Premier League last season. Yeah. So that says it all, really.
No, definitely. I'm.
No wonder United were trying to get him.
I've got a really niggling feeling that I should be going with. I should be thinking about switching Kane to Aubameyang game at 1. Thank you very much, Graham Large, for that subscribe. I really do think that. I don't know if it's just because of the chat going into meltdown about Aubameyang scoring a screamer. Apparently, it was a screamer, wasn't it?
It was a good goal. It was a good twist and turn and then smashed it right into the top corner. And I celebrated, and I was thinking, hold on a minute, this is pre-season. I don't want to be doing
it's a friendly.
I don't want to get it's like,
and then obviously,
So,
and then it was a bit of a Chuckle Vision own goal that Maitland-Niles conceded, and it kind of brought the reality back that you guys need to really invest in that defense, don't you? But I mean, they've spent the money. They spent the money, which they've done, but just really frustrating that they haven't bolstered their attack, their defense.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've got a week to sort of try and figure. I think they should have got a defender in earlier so they could get settled in with a back line. I mean, I'm certainly not considering any Arsenal defenders getting into my team as we stand at the moment. So, yeah, it's frustrating, but I think for the last 10 years or so, we've been always been crying out for more defenders and never getting them. So I'm not surprised.
No, well, it's great. Thank you for coming on to the stream again this evening, and we'll hopefully have you on again next week to talk about your team. Do you think it's going to change much towards Game Week 1, or are you thinking like you're done with your tinkering now?
No, I'm going to be doing loads of tinkering. Probably going to be tinkering every morning, every afternoon, every evening as we got up to the big kickoff on Friday.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of changes. I think we've got one more person to bring in. LFC Mert 27. We'll bring him into the stream, and we'll probably end it on that one. Thank you, Dan, and speak soon.
Cheers, mate. Thanks
Cheers.
a lot.
Thank you.
Cheers. Wait.
LFC Mert 27. You're live on the FPL call-in with myself and Steve-O. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You right, Jason?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you, Mr. Mert. How can I help you this evening? Have you got your posted your team in the Rate My Team at all?
Yep, I have at 8:56. Now I've gone with something completely different, and I just want to see your output on it.
Well, Dereco is just gonna. 1 second. Bear with me.
Dorko XDQ donated £5 through Super Chat. Is it bad that I have in the bank and happy with my team, or am I being stupid starting the season within the bank?
Is it? Do you hear that, Steve-O?
Oh, I've read it. So.
Yeah. Is it bad that I have 1.5 in the bank and I'm happy with my team, or am I being stupid that I'm starting the season with 1.5 in the bank? I always prefer to have all my money on the table start of the season. Now obviously that's not everybody does that, and people have plans for transfers game weeks to come, but myself, I always try and squeeze as much value out of the team. Now I don't know what Steve-O's opinion on that is. Steve-O?
No, I completely agree. I think for having 1.5 in the bank, unless you've got some extraordinary strategy which requires 1.5, 0.5, maybe a million at a push, but 1.5, I think that's going to have a major detrimental effect on your team overall, to be honest with you. But yeah, all I will say is you didn't need to put a fiver for that. We would have happily have just read that out normally, but thank you for the £5. Really, really appreciate it. I think we've just had another.
We've just did another one here from
Graham Large.
Graham Large is going to read it out now.
Thank you.
Graham Large donated £5 through Super Chat. Just a little something to help you guys out.
Graham Large, thank you ever so much for that. That's really helps support the channel and keep the fuel that is the fire that is the Elite FPL podcast. And we're looking to always continue to improve it. I've actually got a camera that's going out to Steve-O tomorrow. It's going to be upgrading his camera so he's not like a fuzzball anymore. He's going to have a bit of light in his face instead of using that 480p camera. But bit by bit, we're improving the stream, and yeah, the support is great. Thank you.
Yeah, so LFC, you're the final caller of the evening. It's a 5-3-2 formation for your team.
Yeah.
It looks pretty standard, to be honest with you, apart from one player, which I'm questioning as to why you brought him in, and it's Pereira of Leicester.
Yeah, I've been watching him this pre-season along with last season, obviously. He literally plays like a winger at Leicester, always pushing up. And I'm thinking, if I'm having 5 defenders, I might as well have them always consisting of fullbacks, and he had 2 goals, 8 assists, and he's bound to improve this season, hopefully.
Yeah, but aren't you concerned that when he got those assists and goals, he was more playing in that advanced role as a third in the playing in that attacking role as one of the 3 up front? When he was pushed back, when Rodgers took over, like the last 8 or 9 games, he didn't get much whatsoever. I think he may have got like 1 assist or something.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm just judging by what I've seen when I see him play. What because he does always overlap and stuff, but his price tag is a bit of a problem.
And that, what you've just said there, is just exactly the thing about having the eye test. I never have the eye test. I just go on what literally players return. The thing with the eye test is that I think that shows that shows up you, the person that's doing the eye test, of the likelihood of that person returning in the foreseeable future. Whereas someone like me just goes, oh, Pereira's done nothing, not worth the money. But for you, it's like you've just said, this guy is just bowling down the right wing. It's obvious he's going to get into the assists and goals, but mainly the assists and everything. So I think it's a perfectly good idea, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know. Let's see how it goes. Obviously, if he doesn't do well, I can always get some for 5.5, or even a Chelsea defender for 6, like Azpilicueta or anyone else, because his price tag is a lot, as I said.
I like that team. I like that team a lot. It's got a lot going for it. And you've got the attacking. Okay, Walker Peters, question mark. That's the one player that I would probably think is going to be out of your team. I think with Boona saying that he's taken out his team, Aurier, Spurs fans begging for Aurier to be back. Obviously, he only had an operation on his hand, like a chat member was saying earlier on. He's going to be probably back into training this week. I think Walker Peters is probably need to be taken out. But other than that, that team it's a great team. I mean, I do like Sigurdsson. I do like Perez. And I do like Kane and Wilson. I think, that is, other than having no Man City, which is a big downside.
Yeah,
you've done as best you can without Man City, and again, you can't have everybody, but you've got sensible picks there. You really have got sensible picks there, and obviously, Steve was on about Pereira. I mean, you can still get things out. In the position he's playing at the moment, he just will still have the run forward, and he still has a chance of getting the assist. But Digne again, Alexander-Arnold again, assist potential. You've gone with the defenders that have got those assist potentials. You really have. Yeah. I like that team a lot.
Yeah, thank you. With Walker Peters, I just want a Tottenham defender because they're known for their clean sheets. So wherever Pochettino picks, I'm going to follow and get a Tottenham defender, as there is a lot of them for 5.0. Like Foyth is 5.0, Aurier is 5.0. Either way, hopefully I should have.
What about Lloris?
What about? Lloris? Yeah, well, no, I was thinking more Alderweireld or Vertonghen. You could downgrade Pereira and then upgrade Walker Peters for that 0.5, and then maybe Pereira to Aaron Wan-Bissaka as an example, or Coleman or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea, but I don't really trust the Tottenham centre back, as I want that chance of assists. Clean sheets.
No,
but
that's fair enough. Yeah. Brilliant.
These things to consider. Yeah.
I mean, it's a strong team. There's no two ways of saying it really. I think that you've got Daily Llama. I was going to say the Daily Boomer then. The Daily Llama says that you've got all the hitters. You've got a lot of hitters in there. You've got a lot of hitters, and You've spent in defence, and you've got a bit light in the midfield, some would say, but you've had to incorporate Kane into that team, and you had to do it.
In the words Jason and lad here, no City, but I'm sure. Is there any reasoning as to why no City?
Well, if you've been watching the stream, I think whenever I've been on, I've said the same thing. I'm not a City fan, and they beat us in the Community Shield today, so as of now, definitely no Man City players.
You can't play Well, I say you can't play the game. You play the game the way you want to play it. At the end of the day,
I've been playing for a long time, and I've had my returns but I've had City players before, to be fair. But this year, I don't know. I could do potentially with a wild card, but for now, I thought let me keep it with these type of players and see how it goes, because it is solid all round.
Well, thank you very much for showing us your team. I think it's a great team, and Mert, I look forward to speak to you again next week and close to the game week deadline. I mean, we're 4 days, 21 hours, 29 minutes, 33 seconds away. Got a little countdown, by the way. Countdown on the stream. What do you guys think of the countdown? Do you like it? Give me some feedback. Or is
I
it
like
just,
it.
you know, it's gonna really bring the sweat come the last 24 hours when we just watch those minutes just tick away.
All eyes on Friday.
I'm going to change the font to red, blood red, come the last hour. But yeah, thank you ever so much, Mr. Mert. Thank you. And
thank you. It's a pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you. Just a quick one, Jason. Can you bring up? He said not to discuss it, but I want to discuss it just quickly because this is the last few minutes now to go. So at 21:25, Dereco has posted his team back, the team that has 1.5 in the bank, and I just can't believe he's got 1.5 in the bank because it's an extraordinary team, and it's got the two main heavy hitters in Sterling and Salah. So for anybody listening on audio, it's Pope in goal, Van Dijk, Alexander-Arnold, Zinchenko, Rico, Fraser, Sterling, Salah, Barkley, Wilson, Jota, but on the bench, Wan-Bissaka. So 1.5 in the bank and everything. I can't believe that's got 1.5 in the bank.
That's got 1.5 in the bank.
Yeah. Mad. Absolutely crazy. So fair play to you. Fair play to you, Dereco. And yeah, there's nothing I can add, basically. I think
it's a good team.
Yeah, I agree. The fact you can bench Aaron Wan-Bissaka as well.
I think we're getting to the point where the stream's been going on for over 3 hours now. Let's go turn the focus. There we go.
I need to get to bed, Jason.
There you go. You can see me in HD now. Oh my god. Thank you ever so much for tuning into the stream this evening. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the call-ins and have you in the channel talking and commenting away. God, this is really weird. I'm not doing that again. Hope you join us in the week. We're going to be streaming every evening and just sharing your opinions. We're going to be doing other things like talking about predicting where teams are going to finish. We're going to be looking at we will be previewing Game Week 1 as well, and we'll be looking forward to setting our community team up for that game week. It's been an absolute marathon over the last 2 weeks, especially for Steve-O, and we're kind of, Steve-O was saying that we're kind of just going to improve the stream. Part of that is just getting these hours under our belt so we can kind of get used to the format, get you guys used to the format, get the feedback we need, and think of other ideas as well. And yeah, that was a close-up, and I'm sorry, guys. I do apologize. Steve-O, do you want to do the admin? I don't mind doing it if you want. I mean,
no, yeah, it's fine. Let's do the admin. Let's do the old straight into it straight away. So as usual, for anybody that's been joining us on this record, and it has been a record breaking for the Elite FPL podcast viewership. Basically, if you've enjoyed what you've watched, hit that subscribe button. Like Jason said, we're going to be doing streams every single day. The Elite FPL podcast is going live every single day, and they're all going to be there's long-winded ones. Get your teams in, get us chatting all things FPL. But yeah, just hit that subscribe button. If you have watched tonight, you've stayed with us for 3 hours and you haven't hit that like button, the simple answer is why not? You're clearly liking the stream, so just hit that like button. That really does show the support for the show. Let's try and get 100 likes. Just of interest, whereabouts are you? 147 people in now watching the very end, so all 147 of you, hit that like button. But yes, and the usual thing of follow us on Twitter at Elite FPL. That's where we do most of our advertising. And of course, the Discord group. We've been talking about it all night. You've heard the positive things about it. And of course, you get to talk and continue talking once the stream ends to all like-minded people with this Elite FPL community that we're building. And thank you to Daily Llama and Boona for moderating everything tonight. You've been absolutely fantastic. Really appreciate what you guys do.
We've got a new and also we've got a new moderator as well in Brett Mollison. He's now a Oceanic moderator for the Discord community as well. So as the Discord grows, so does the moderator team. And yeah, don't forget also wait there. I'll quickly tell you guys.
Oh, what's going on here? Jason's got a surprise, has he? Is it a bottle of vodka? Is he going to take a shot like I did?
Don't forget, guys. Every month we'll be giving away these mugs as well to people in the community league. So you may not be in the cash league, but you've got a mug to win, and it's nice and HD, so you can have a look at it. The new logo will be on it, and it'll be yours to win. So something to play for, guys. Thank you ever so much for all of your support again. See you soon. See you tomorrow.
Just of interest, whereabouts are you? Not in the world, but are you near like an industrial machine or something? It's very 2 seconds. Just ask a couple of questions. I just need to get the door for a second.
No
Sorry.
problem,
This is what happens when you're live.
What's going on?
Not really. I'm waiting to go to gym. What about yourself?
Live on YouTube doing a stream.
Why do you feel that you're constantly changing your team, mate? Is it just there's just so many ideas?
So many ideas, so many different perspectives. I blame Brett Mollison for his 5 at back, because when you see my new team,
wow.
Brighton home, they couldn't buy a goal in the last season.
Well, I don't know. Dan's got Glenn Murray. I think he'll have a word to say about that.
I'm detecting possibly a German accent. I'm probably completely way out. But where are you calling us from?
South Africa.
On the first day, I literally just typed in FPL, like first draft, and yours came up like first. So I thought, oh, well, I'll watch one of the live streams when it comes on. And then I thought, this is a bit long, isn't it? About 2 hours in. And then 3 hours later, well, an hour later, I was like, yeah, these seem alright, you know. Steven's not that bad.
I have one question for you. I want you to predict the order of the Elite FPL ranking. So, like, who do you think will finish first, second, and third out of y'all three this season?
So it's certainly no disrespect to Dan, but it's certainly going to be between me and Jason. And right now, as it stands, I'd go with Jason because my history suggests that I'm going to be having a bad season.
So I've got the 5 at the back. I just see a lot of value there. I feel like if I don't have Salah, I can spread the money elsewhere and maybe get the points another way.
All the teams now, except for obviously Salah and Sterling, these players, a lot of players are going to change towards the start of the season just because of new transfers, injuries that could happen, and all of that. So for me to tell you now, like personally right now, I'd say definitely if Tammy Abraham or Batshuayi are cheap, I'd get one of them just because I don't care about the Man United. We can score against them at least 2 or 3.
Hey guys, this season we're using Discord. It's a text and voice application where you can talk all things FPL with fellow community members. You can post your team in the Rate My Team, talk in the general chat, you can look at transfer news, look at awesome GIFs, sign up for our Cash Mini League, look at our previous podcasts, and even join us live on air in one of our streams. We look forward to seeing you guys. Link is in the description, or look at the code on screen.